It's good to see you, sir.
Benner.
We're on air?
She's beautiful. See that? When you tell a woman she's pretty and beautiful.
Oh, it just flows, don't it?
Yeah, tell you.
This time, the mayor will call to order the regular city council meeting at 6:02, Tuesday, February the 8th of 2022. City Council Chambers, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. We have with us in the chambers, District 2, Grady Simpson, District 3, Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, Mayor Pro Tem. We have District 4, Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. And we have District 5, Tim Royce. Grady, would you lead us in invocation, please?
Yes, sir. Father God, we come giving you thanks for this day. We thank you for the grace and mercy you've shown us during the time of COVID. We thank you for bringing us out. We pray for those ones who lost loved ones, those who are struggling, continue to struggle because of the adversities of the past. We ask you continue to fill our hearts with love so that we may reach out, care, and teach one another your ways. All in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. All right, our next item on the agenda is to hear remarks or mayor and council community recognitions and events. Do we have any? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 6.1, adoption of the minutes. It's to discuss and consider the minutes of the regular city council meeting on February 1 of 2022. Is there a motion?
Mayor and council, I make a motion to accept the minutes from the regular city council meeting on February 1st, 2022.
We have a motion from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem District 4. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is 7.2. Greg, would you read that, please?
Yes.
Or 7.1.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we present to you tonight resolution number 1087, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Texas, calling a general election for the City of Terrell, Texas to be administered by the Kaufman County Elections Administrator on Saturday, May 7th, 2022, for the purpose of electing the mayor of the City of Terrell, Texas, designating the polling places and filing deadlines, ordering notices of election to be posted and published as prescribed by law in connection with such election, and providing an effective date.
This is City Secretary Don Stahl. Don?
Mayor and Council, Resolution Number 1087 is calling an election for the City of Terrell on May 7th, 2022, to elect a mayor. In your packet, you'll see the polling locations, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Don? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion on item or resolution 1087?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve Resolution 1087 as presented.
We have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is 7.2.
Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight resolution number 1089. The resolution of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Texas, approving the contract for election services between the City of Terrell and Kaufman County to conduct the general election for the City of Terrell scheduled for May 7th, 2022, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the contract for election services for the May 7th, 2022 election, and providing an effective date.
Does this lock us in for an election? In other words, if there's no opponent?
We can cancel the
Okay.
election.
We can
Mr. Mayor.
cancel, yes, the
Yes, we can.
deadline is March 1st.
Okay.
Cancel.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, this is, City Secretary Don Style. Go ahead.
That's okay.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
In your packet is a copy of the draft contract between the City of Terrell and Kaufman County for them to conduct the election for us. And as we were saying, if we end up not having an election, we can cancel by March 1st.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, any further questions for Ms. Style? Hearing none, is there a motion on resolution number 1089?
Mayor, make a motion that we approve Resolution 1089.
We have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, District 4. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is 8.1.
Mr. Mayor, we will conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a change in zoning from retail executive estate R/EE 32 to planned development retail PD-R to allow the construction of an open venue space. The property is 4.3992 acres out of the Davis M. Mullins Survey, abstract number 3437, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, also known as 15001 Highway 205, PD 21-05.
Okay. This is going to be presented by Municipal Development Director Charles Fenner. Mr. Fenner.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. In front of you, you do have a request for a zone change from a PD, the retail/executive estates to planned development retail on approximately 4.39 acres. The applicant is requesting a PD on this site to allow for the main use is to be an open venue, and what that is for weddings and other events. We met with the family, the daughter and the dad that own this property several times, and without getting into a lot of detail for how she's going to lay the buildings out and what she's going to do with it, we just decided that we could go through this process of entitling the property for her use because the future use of this area is for local retail. And so to have a PD on it and have those specific requirements on it at this point would be good for them to start thinking about the investment that they want to make. So there's going to be a lot more to this. It's not a standard PD that we've brought to you before because there will have to be a site plan, an official site plan approved, which will show the circulation, which will show all the elevations that I have talked a little bit about here. The entrance will be landscaped up quite heavily. There'll be improvements to the property. They'll have some thematic elements to the property. They will have a fire lane around the property. I understand those things, but we did talk a little bit about, depending on the type of use and how they do it, we could contemplate having some maybe rock or granite out there for other parking, just to keep it a little natural, depending on how they plan that up. Again, that development process would come later after this whole entitlement is put on the property. They will also, as part of the site plan, they will also be submitting obviously a building plan and a site plan showing you those elevation changes and the approvals that we'll have. So there'll be more detail in upcoming, because we'll allow the entitlement, or the way we were going to do this was allow the PD on the property at this point, and then let a lot of the use and layout be tied to a site plan approval that would have to come through council. Okay, that would be attached in the future. So before they could pull a permit, they would actually have to submit a site plan, a detailed site plan. Then, of course, after that would come the construction plat, detail, the civils, and all that go along with the platting process. And at the same time, there's some right-of-way movement there on State Highway 205, so all that stuff has to be taken into consideration. You will know that in the package, she has pictures like the one up here. These are some things that she's talking about getting to, and they are part of the package, the application, but again, the site plan is gonna have to detail this out heavily with the elevations of the sign, the landscaping around the building, what the landscape will look like, where the parking will be, where some of the events will be held, and at that point in time, there can be other decisions made. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously for this, and they do understand that they will be reviewing a detailed site plan before anything can happen to the property. But again, with all that I just said, really and truly, this is just to lay that PD overlay of retail and giving them the right to use this as a venue, open door venue. That's really all that we're approving, because they have to come back with the step of the site plan in detail of what they'll be doing. We'll be dealing with hours of operation and so forth.
Okay. All right. Thank you, staff. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and open up the public hearing, and then we'll have an opportunity after we hear from the public, if there's any, to at the next item to discuss it, all right? So we're gonna open the public hearing for the retail executive estates, right? Is that correct?
The PD for R.
PD, yes, for R. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing, and we'll move on to the next item, 8.2.
Yes,
Yes.
Item 8.2, ordinance number 2896, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, providing for the creation of a planned development PD 21-05 under the provisions of Section 31A, Appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell on certain real property consisting of 4.591 acres of land out of the John C. Hale Survey, abstract number 202, Kaufman County, Texas, and more particularly described by meets and bounds on the plat and legal description attached hereto as Exhibit A, and under the terms and conditions specified in Exhibits B, C, D, E, and F, all of which are attached hereto and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. This comes to you tonight on first reading.
All right. So I guess my question, Fenner, would be, there appears to be a road that connects State Highway 205 to Griffith near that piece of property. Is that going to affect, is there any plans to have that road continue across the street of 205 or across 205?
Well, there is some concern of how you're going to get to and from this property with TxDOT rebuilding 205 and the possibility of a median of no turning, so one direction, so you'll have to mark it well.
Can I just clarify the mayor's question? Mayor, are you asking about, you can see my
Yes.
screen? You're talking about this right here?
Yes.
That's technically a private drive for that business right there.
Oh, okay.
The roadway that you might have in mind is down further
Yes.
south over
Okay.
here. So that's a private drive. That's a
I think,
different issue.
Is that 237 you're talking of? Okay. We've talked a little bit about that, but that's not in the plan right now.
I see that now. Okay, good. Does anybody have any comment, any questions?
I appreciate the process. This is just a zoning change.
Yes, sir.
So that's
And
it.
again, it was a unanimous vote from P&Z, right?
Right.
Correct. Anyone else?
I have a question just to clarify.
Yes, ma'am.
So this structure, it's a metal building up front,
Yes, ma'am.
and then behind it, there's a mobile home,
Yeah, yes,
okay? And right now, they have that gravel road
yes,
from the 205 all the way back to the mobile home?
yes, ma'am.
That may be, is that gonna be allowable, or is it something we're gonna address later with
Oh,
the new
yeah,
site
there's,
plan?
what you're doing now is just saying, that particular piece of property, in the local retail, that is a portion of this property or retail, doesn't allow for an open venue.
Okay,
So we decided to do it this way so we could have some say in planning and the layout. None of that will be there. They're very well, we talked to them just as an individual department, several times, and then we had them in a couple times at DRC, so we let them know there's a lot of drainage work that needs to be dealt with, and of course, the pile of the rock there in the trailer house. He's actually cleaned a lot of that up. When they were annexed into the city, we did have to get some of that stuff cleaned up, and so, but yes, ma'am, your question, nothing will be done on that property until all that's cleaned up, and prior to that, you'll be seeing a site plan anyhow.
So all that'll be addressed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Is there a motion on 8.2? Ordinance number 2896.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2896.
I have a motion from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem, District 3. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Bless you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is 8.3. Mr. Chumpert?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we will conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a change in zoning from single-family residential 7.5, SF 7.5, to multifamily MM-22 to allow construction of a fourplex family dwelling. The property is part of Lot 2, Block 582, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas. This property is located on the corner of Mineral Wells Road and Fraser Street, also known as 0 Mineral Wells Road, ZC 21-11.
Just, thanks, Greg. Mayor, council, you can see in your current where we have the property on Wells, we've discussed this with several people. At Mineral Wells and Fraser, you can see everything is surrounded by the SF 7.5 zoning, and when we have this 7.5 zoning, we like to keep that in place. The area is called out to be new traditional neighborhood, and that is the 7.5 zoning, in some cases the 6 zoning, and you'll see all the yellow there is 7.5. So the applicant did request the zone to be changed to multifamily so you can actually build a fourplex. The comprehensive plan designates it as new traditional neighborhood, and that does not fit within the comp plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission denied the zone change unanimously, 9-0.
All right. Thank you, Charles. This time, this is a public hearing. We're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of this matter? There's not. We're going to close the public hearing and move on to item 8.4.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2897, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2 zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell by changing the zoning classification on certain real property, more particularly described as part of Lot 2, Block 582, revised map of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, containing 0.505 acres of land, 21,995 square feet, and also known as 0 Mineral Wells Road, Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, from single-family 7.5, SF 7.5 to multifamily residential 22, MF 22, as shown on the plat attached here to as Exhibit A and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability and providing an effective date, ZC 21-11.
Okay. Charles, so this was denied by P&Z, unanimous? Denial?
Denial.
Okay, easy. Any question? Somebody have a motion?
We wouldn't need a motion on this one, Mr. Mayor. If you wish to go along with the P and Z, we just take no action on this ordinance at all.
Okay. So we don't need a motion for no action?
No, sir.
Okay. Then,
Mayor, I know it's y'all's discretion. You can do it more than one way. If you feel more comfortable making a vote, then you would vote to endorse the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision.
a motion to accept the recommendation by the Planning and Zoning.
You can certainly do that, but it wouldn't be involving this ordinance.
Okay, so I think
Okay,
we
well,
need to. Yeah, I agree. We need to do that.
Let's just do that, and I would say, Mayor, I'm going to say that we accept the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Committee and deny the zone request change in the item presented.
Thank you, Councilman. That's a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
A second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is 8.5. Greg?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we will conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a change in zoning from agriculture, AG, to single-family residential, SF6. The property is 9.417 acres out of the J.C. Hale Survey, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, also known as 0 Rose Hill Road, ZC 21-10.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yes, this project is 9 acres on Rose Hill. We've seen a lot of requests for the change. We also noticed, you take note that these 9-acre tracts, 4-acre tracts, 5-acre tracts are pretty much what we have. We don't have a lot of large tracts out there, so it makes it somewhat difficult. You will see another one similar to this and on the mineral well side at the next public hearing meeting. So what this, we've worked with this group for about 8 or 9 months. It started out as a townhome complex with 30-foot lots. And as you know, it's zone ag, and part of our future land use plan has a characteristic of in the new traditional neighborhood where we can say, hey, we can have higher density in transition. And one of the things that we want to try to stick with is that higher density. On the high density side, we like to say that high density side is what usually is transferring into a commercial area or retail area. So for instance, you may have townhomes right behind a big mall or things like that if you're going to rezone it. But when you're way off the path, then we look more towards the low density of the new traditional neighborhood. And we also have to look at it from the standpoint of some of these areas, whether it's SF6 or 7.5 in the new traditional neighborhood, you're talking about one house, one lot difference in these small tracts. There's not a lot you can do with them. And a lot of these tracts, they're just able to run a road right up the middle, and whatever the lots are, or whatever the lots are. So as we went 3 months planning with the townhomes, we just said no. There was just no way to do it, make it right. So they came back with just straight SF6 zoning. And we started talking about it, and we started talking about a few things to maybe trade off a little bit with some lot sizes and get us a connection to the preserve that's going to be developed. And by the way, we met with the preserve today. They're getting ready to really start moving. They're just south of this project too. So we went through this. We started up a developer's agreement, as I told you before. I think I had even given you some a summary of what we were going to be doing with this group. So before you today is the rezoning of the property, and that's all we're really looking at. But I will tell you that we're working on a developer's agreement, and just today I had a 2-hour meeting because the developer is actually hooked on to D.R. Horton. So D.R. Horton is wanting to buy these lots up, but we have to figure out what makes sense for the type of houses that they need to build, because they build a different type of house, maybe needing a longer backyard because of the way they lay out their houses and less setbacks and so forth. And so we'll be working through that agreement to be bringing to council later if you approve this zoning. So part of that, what we would do if you approve this zoning request, then we will be working on the developer's agreement to bring back to you for the connection to the preserve development, extension of Windsor Road, the single-family SIG zoning with some lot size adjustments, landscape enhancements, additional upgrades with the development standards, 85% masonry, stone, and brick with maybe 4 different features on the house, maybe a streetscape for the entire development that we've created in-house here that allows for a much bigger green area between the curb and the sidewalk, and then the trees planted in certain areas. So we'll just have to look at that and see what they have. They had some porch deficiencies, as a lot of builders do to our ordinance, and we told them that there's a way to maybe be creative about that and get some of those. So we'll just see what happens there. But I wanted to say all that to let you know that that's how we've come, that's just, through this 8 months to get to this process. And so if you approve this zoning, then we will be back soon with the developer's agreement and the applicant and the home builder at the same time with elevations and so forth in that developer's agreement. And the P&Z Commission recommended unanimously to rezone it to SF6.
Thank you, Charles.
Yes, sir.
This is a public hearing again. We will open the public hearing to hear remarks from anyone on this matter. Is there anyone to speak for or against? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing and move on to item 8.6. Council?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2898, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2 zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell by changing the zoning classification on certain real property, more particularly described as 9.417 acres of land, 410,079 square feet, situated within the John C. Hale Survey, Abstract 202, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, from agriculture, AG, to single-family 6, SF6, as shown on the plat attached here to as Exhibit A, and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability, and providing an effective date, ZC 21-10. This comes to you tonight on first reading.
All right, council. Again, this is a 9-0 unanimous vote to approve from our planning and zoning. Are there any questions for Mr. Fenner?
Mr. Fenner, I have a comment. We'll see what the vote says, but as you work through your process, as this is our smallest housing classification, I would ask that we try not to vary too much off the 60-foot lot width. I know that that's not possible with every single lot, but it is my wish that at least 75% of the lots would at least retain their 60-foot width. It's a minimum for a good reason. You can park 2 cars out front and still have a 20-foot span of driveway. So there's some logic behind the 20-foot. So as you work through the process, I would just say, I don't care for the smaller lot widths. I mean, if they're trying to nail you down to 45 or something, I would try to take them a different direction.
Point well taken, and I can assure you right now the layout is over 60, some to 70.
Okay.
Yes, I agree with Councilman
Okay.
Royce.
All right,
It just, it makes for a good, hearty neighborhood.
we agree, yeah.
Any other comments? Hearing none, is there a motion on item 8.6? That's ordinance number 2898.
Mayor, I make a motion that we move to approve ordinance 2898.
Have a motion from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Mayrani Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item is 8.7. Again,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are to conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a request for a specific use permit to allow for truck parking and minor repair shop on a property currently zoned as light industrial, LI. The property is located at 317 County Road, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, SUP 21-10.
thank you.
Commissioner Shumpert, Mayor and Council, you have seen this before. This SUP at 317 Towty came before you a little over a year ago, 2019, or longer than that. There were some concerns back then, the utilization and having trucks there and getting into the neighborhood, and I'm not so sure we had that many problems. However, all the requirements, pretty much all the requirements on the SUP were never met. The site must be screened entirely with the masonry wall or wrought iron fence with solid landscaping, no outside storage of trucks, no more than 5 trucks on the same lot. Hours of operations limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Parking vehicles must be on paved surface. Property is not to be used as a residence. These were things that the council placed in the SUP. The next paragraph there on the staff report, you can see where all the violations are, and I can read them too, or hopefully you've been able to read them.
Good.
That we know that there were 9 trucks at most times on the property. The wall was not done and the pavement's not done. And it keeps going on, the junk and debris and the numerous vehicles and things like that. So obviously, we recommended denial of this SUP request. When we did approach them for violations and we were writing them zoning violations and citations, we did say the only thing you could do is amend your SUP. You have that right to come in and change it, but then you're gonna have to come into compliance and you're not even guaranteed. They did follow that order, but we still continue to give them violations, and they are, this is in front of you, and of course, it was denied and unanimously by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that brief. Is there this is a public hearing, so we're gonna open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on, for or against, this item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mayor, I would just like to say that I'm glad that P and Z denied.
Hold on, we need to read it into,
sorry.
go ahead, Shumpert.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2899, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, granting specific use permit number 21-10 SUP 2110 under the provisions of section 31B, appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell to Rajdeep S. Bangu, allowing an exception to the provisions of section 29, appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell for certain property more described as the Everett subdivision, a part of the J.C. Hale survey, abstract 202, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, and also being known as 317 Talty Road, as shown on the plat thereof, attached hereto as Exhibit A, and made a part hereof for all purposes by permitting a truck parking and minor repair business to be located on said property, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date, SUP 21-10. This would come to you tonight on first reading.
All right, thank you, Greg. Appreciate you reading that into the record. These are real easy. When we don't have somebody come in and speak to the council, and they expect us to pass after P and Z has denied them, that's real simple to do. Grady, did you want to read something into the record?
Well, I think it's awesome that we're doing this because we first brought this up. I felt that this would be a problem. I see trucks going down Talty Road all the time, so this is great. Love to hear it. I'm happy, man.
All right, so again, this is one of those that we're approving P and Z's recommendation. So is there, are we approving it or accepting it? Accepting it. So is there a motion on 8.8?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the recommendation, accepting the recommendation from P and Z to decline the special use permit as presented in 8.8.
Thank you, Councilman. We have a motion from Tim Royce, District 5. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is 8.9.
Before we go to that, Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
wanted to also, in line with what Councilman Simpson was saying, and I know Mr. Fenner's aware of this, there's been enforcement action in the works about the situation that Mr. Fenner described, and I know that Councilman has been aware of it as well, and we're addressing that.
Thank you. Shumpert, 8.9.
8.9. Item 8.9, we're to conduct a public hearing regarding the following proposed amendments to the Terrell City Code of Ordinance as follows. Appendix 1, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell, zoning ordinance update PZ 12-20-21, zoning ordinance sections.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Fenner.
Ready? Okay, Mayor, Council, we talked briefly about this at one of our meetings. I briefed you on what we had gone before the P and Z on. So through this real quick PowerPoint, this basically sums it up briefly. Section 13, the summary of zoning district regulations. Again, if you remember, that's the sheet you'll have in your packet that has all the zoning districts, and it has all the lot widths and the areas and everything that pertains to those zoning districts. And so that's a big change, because everything that we do in the actual body of the ordinance has to be changed on that page, and then everything that we change on that page has to be changed in the body, so some of it is somewhat redundant. So it updates it reflected changes on any changes made to the zoning district. The other one, then the section 17, 18, 19, 20, and 22 of the residential districts, all minimum floor areas per the dwelling units are changed to 2,000 square feet in single family 10, 7.5, and 6. As you know, there's a 1,200 square foot and a 1,500 square foot and an 1,800 square foot. Those are all moved to, in the Texas Heritage, those are all moved up to the 2,000 square foot. And we talked a little bit, or quite a bit about that, of how we are doing more of these developers agreements with these projects, and allowing for the smaller lots, square footage size, so we can hold up the standards and the quality standards and the masonry standards that we really don't have the authority to do with just straight zoning. Section 21, the multifamily residential district apartments, we changed the wording to require certain architectural features, and the wording in the parking regulations. And we also made sure that if you built a single-family house and multifamily, you could build according to 7.5. At one point, that wasn't allowed.
Charles, I'm going to pause there, and we did have a note that was provided by council, and I think it was a good catch, and that is, I think we had a minimum lot area problem in multifamily as well. And so right now, you'll find that document, council, and I fast forward, by the way, to page 150, but there's a little tag spot there. Since Charles had that multifamily PowerPoint slide up, I do think, and staff's going to recommend, that this was a good catch by City Council. The minimum lot area for a apartment complex being adjusted to be a 10-acre minimum. I think that'll help us with some of our problems with sort of the miniature drop-in. Hey, look, I have zoning, and I can drop in a really high-density thing on a very small piece of land. That's been a problem before for us. And so when I heard that comment from council, I thought, yeah, we need to include that. So we'll have some wording on that, discussion on that later. But I didn't want your PowerPoint slide to go by without mentioning that.
All right. And in section 30, which was created a new zoning district, the heavy commercial, it's conduct light manufacturing, assembly, fabrication activities, wholesaling and service operations. Comprehensive zone to the light industrial, and is intended for the option for the development areas as the industrial business park in the comprehensive plan. So that's just a new zone that we're creating. There is one use that's incorporated in that, and there are no areas zoned heavy commercial at this time. So in other words, if somebody wants to rezone this use, they would have to come and find a proper property that meets the criteria of the lot layout and size and density and so forth, and then apply for that. Section 30A, Research Technology Park. This is a new district. It's creating a low in density, more of a research park, as it says, less of an industrial park. Employment centers, location for offices, and incorporated development research and laboratory facilities. High quality and low quality manufacturing issues, limited assembly and fabrications, maybe research park condo style type buildings where there's 10,000 square foot areas with offices and multiple uses, and just more local, so it diversifies a little bit. Yes, and that's what it says, diversifying the economic base of the city to increase quality jobs, enhance Terrell as a destination for business, retail, and living, systemically connected Connectivity by creating a connected park, system, trail, bikeway, and sidewalks. A lot of times when you do these parks and research parks, you have a lot of connection of those parks and the green areas and the lakes and things like that. And so we will be seeing some project come through very soon that will have underlying or proposed underlying zoning of the research park. Okay, and then the next slide, we did change the definitions, if you remember, on the garage, the overnight shelter, the porch, and the renumbering of definitions in order to keep them alphabetically. And you can see those in the back there, basically what they are saying. So the next steps, the zoning, this was when P&Z had this, they would be recommending to City Council approval or denial, and presented to Council in January. However, we had to move this to February, and so then we would have the second reading in March if this went through. The new ordinance will take effect at the date of the second ordinance reading, and any projects with current applications will be able to continue under their previous zoning. And a lot of the projects that we have also have developers agreements tied to them, so that will make some changes too. So if you look on the table, you'll see everything highlighted in red that has been changed that I just talked about. The EE64 is a new zone that we're creating. It's basically a 64,000 square foot zone. So now you have the 32,000 square foot lot, a 64,000 square foot lot, a 16,000 square foot lot. And then you go up to the Texas Heritage for 3 acres and then ag into 5 acres. Those are minimum lots sizes. So you can have a mixture of all, and sometimes in a master plan community, which we have areas that have that could be assembled into 2,000 to 3,000 acres. And so we could have a diversity of housing there from 6 or garden homes up to Texas Heritage and so forth. Minimum unit dwelling size, the big thing there is the 2,000 square foot change that we went from in the Heritage from 1,800 to 2,000, and then E64 stays 2,600. SF10 was 1,800, it's now 2,000. 1,500 for SF7.5, now 2,000. And then really the lot widths and depths, they fall along in line basically with on these other districts with what the size of the lots that they are on. Then you move down to the VC heavy commercial. So everything's red in there because we had to create that 40,000 square foot minimum. Not a minimum dwelling size, of course. 200 foot for lot width and depth minimum. 50, 50, 50 for these setbacks. The maximum height's 35 and 70% coverage. Now the RT, which is the research technology, it has a 6,000 square foot minimum lot area, and of course no dwelling units, and then it has the opportunity. The big deal there is the 4 stories, 50 or 50 foot, simply because, like we talked about earlier, the employment centers and the other things that go along with that type of use. And those come with the SUP, their size. You can see in here on the next page, this is typical of our zoning district layout in each zone. It talks about your uses, height regulation, area regulations. That's where you get your square foot, your minimum lot area and your width, your front yards, and parking regulations for each. We move into required architectural features, required streetscape amenities. Again, this district, really what we changed on, what we did with this district is we really just fell in line with Executive Estate 32 and changed the areas, widths and stuff up a little bit. Nothing else special about that. If we move into the next item, the SF17, section 17, the SF10. The only thing that changes on that is your minimum floor area. It's currently 1,800 and it will be bumped up to 2,000. Everything else stays the same. And then as you go through the minimum on the single-family 7.5, currently it's 1,500 square feet, bless you, will be moved up to 2,000 square feet. And as we move further, even down to SF6, you'll see that, and I did forget on 7.5 that we did move the lot width from 70 feet to 75 feet, okay? And then on the SF6, we moved the lot width requirement of minimum of 60 to 65 feet. And the 1,200 square foot minimum at that time, or at this current time, will be switched to 2,000 square foot in this ordinance. Townhouse residential has some changes. We talked about the flexible development of the primary attached single-family residence or zero-lot homes in order to preserve non-floodplain areas of open space. We added that in there, or natural areas, through clustering. We also changed that single-family detached units must meet all the lot requirements of the SF6 zoning and the building requirements of the SF 7.5. So if these are single-family lot homes built in the townhome zone district, they have to have the requirements of SF6 zoning and be built to 7.5 standards. If you look down a little bit lower there, the maximum density, 8 units per gross area of land within the non-flood plain area of the development. So we're not incorporating a 10-acre tract that has 7 acres of floodplain and then creating a 10-acre for the volume of density. So in other words, you have to leave it, it has to be left out for the density. So it's 8 units per gross area of land that can be developed in the developable area. Minimum project size, floodplain excluded, the infill development. There's no minimum project size, and the new development requirement is 4 acres for the project size. So if somebody comes in and wants to build a townhome district, we do have a start of an application, and now that's a senior project, but it was set up to be a townhome project, and it will have some of these same requirements too. The other thing that changed on this is that we just took out everything because we redefined really to make it simple so it wasn't so confusing. On the prop porches, it basically says a minimum porch width of 12 feet with a minimum depth of 8 feet, and that would be required for these townhomes. Because you can see down there where B says wraparound porches shall be a minimum of 96 square foot. All that's taken out, and so all you will have here is just a 12 feet porch by 8 feet. As we move over to the parking, section F of the townhomes, and probably really and truly as many times as I looked at this and many times as we've changed this ordinance, one thing you should really change is this picture and upgrade it with a better picture, because a lot of people get confused when they see that, don't see that it's an undesirable and inadequate. They think, oh, well, it looks like the picture, but anyhow, it talks about the parking shall be accessed from the rear unless physical lots are constrained, and then from that point you can have side-loaded garages are acceptable, which is somewhat difficult in townhomes anyhow, unless if it's a huge complex. We took out the front-loaded garage only if physical lot constraints. So side entry garage need to be the way to go, or the rear entry garage would have to be the way to go, and we still keep the 25-foot setback. That was not changed. And then, of course, in our minimum floor dwelling unit, it goes up to 2,000 square feet. That is all on the townhomes. As we move into the multifamily, the single family, what we were talking about earlier that we didn't have in there, the single family duplex, patio home, townhouse residential units constructed in this district shall conform to the SF 7.5 district standards. So if you build a house in a multifamily district, you have to build it to 7.5. And what's kind of weird, crazy about this that we had to fix up in these charts too is that you could say you could build and conform to the SF6, but it wasn't allowed in the chart, so we had to clean that up too. You'll see that here in a minute. Texas Heritage District, the only change that was made on that was the 1,800 square foot minimum to the 2,000 square foot minimum. And then we get into the heavy commercial district, and the thing to really, I explained a little bit about what it was up there, and the purpose and the description is there for you to look at. The area regulations are something to consider. 40,000 square foot of the lot area, minimum lot width is 200, and lot depth is minimum 200. Front yard is 50-foot setback and so forth. So again, this is somewhat of a offset of the light industrial to give it some other things, and in the future, we may look at putting some other categories into the heavy commercial. We may identify some areas through studies that property could be property that could be changed from, say, light industrial to heavy commercial and so forth. Now we move into the charts, and really and truly what we did to the charts, the main thing here was we regrouped these into residential zoning districts, and then we had the uses in each of these residential zoning districts. So when you're looking through here, you can thumb through the first few sections, the first few pages of these charts are all residential zoning districts, and start including the agricultural, the residential uses and personal services and all that on the side. And so really that's what we did with this, so you didn't go back and forth. So it was somewhat of a cleanup job. It seemed to be hard at first just because of the formatting and maybe confusion, but it does make sense. So you'll see through that, that's what we've done on this. Show you, so as you go through page 145, 146, still all residential uses, you'll see how you get into the more intense uses that you'll see there's really nothing allowed in those residential districts. So when you're in personal and service uses, there's nothing allowed in residential districts. When you're in retail uses, there's nothing allowed in residential. And automotive, transportation, then you get to government, and there's several things allowed in the residential district. And then you get into light industrial and manufacturing, and the only thing that we have allowed in the light industrial manufacturing is the cottage industry type. And if you remember, those were local artisans. There was the word local, small, make stuff in-house in the shop, and so sell locally is kind of the idea. When we move into the 1B side of the charts, that's all the non-residential zoning districts. Same concept here. On the left side, you'll go through the same exact uses we had from the residential. So you'll have agricultural, residential, and then the next page will be accessory and temporary. The institutional uses under non-residential. The amusement and recreational uses. Yeah.
Go back one slide, please, or one page. So just to be clear, this is homeless center down there at the bottom on this page. That's an institutional use. So we've defined homeless center for the first time.
Right.
Charles will show you that here in a few minutes in the definitions section. So if you ask yourself, well, where is a homeless center allowed right now? I would say that's a source of confusion, because if you don't define it in your zoning ordinance, you'll have people say, well, wait a minute, does that mean you can do it everywhere, or does that mean you can do it nowhere, right? So that's a problem, and we want to make sure we define that in a clear way. And then we're saying, well, look, we can't define a use and then say you can't do it anywhere in the city. So what we're doing is we're saying under heavy commercial, the VC category, I read this chart, I see S's, right? S means special use permit. So what would have to happen? Somebody would have to come forward and say, I would like to rezone this piece of property from, say, a current light industrial or current commercial to a heavy commercial use. Your planning and zoning board would have to review it, and they'd have to approve it, and they would know that anywhere that they zone heavy commercial would be an opportunity for somebody to come back later and ask for an SUP for one of these three uses, okay? Then somebody would have to come forward and say, okay, pretty please, I'd like to get an SUP for, say, homeless center. Well, again, that's an avenue where you can put some scrutiny on it, and you can say, hey, tell me about your operations. What are you really doing? The planning and zoning board would be your vetting process for that, and the planning and zoning board would have to agree to it and vote yes on it in order for it to move forward. And again, the SUP is the one where it has specific conditions associated with it. So that's kind of an important policy issue coming forward in this particular update. I didn't want it to just kind of fly by. There's a lot of, Charles is presenting a lot of information. I didn't want that little one to fly by too fast. Sorry, Charles.
Thank you, Sims. Also, just be aware too that, and you may have said this, but it does say SUP in the VC, heavy commercial, but you would also have to zone these areas to heavy commercial to even get the SUP. Okay? Does that make sense? Also, want to point out too, the last column there, the RT, which is our new research park. We did this a little differently until we come back and really change things up. We don't know how, maybe more of an overlay or what, but we show C section 30A for permitted uses. That section is going to be the actual zoning district, and in that zoning district, it talks about the uses that can be allowed in the research park area, okay? So that's why you don't see any uses allowed over there. So it references back to the actual zoning district. And I think that was the main thing about the definitions, because we wrote those several definitions and we had to show you where they were allowed and how they were allowed. What kind of process that would be. The rest of this stuff did not change. Again, it was just more of a reformat to go through. So that's it. On every page, again, you'll see the C section 38 for permitted uses for the research part. Now we move into definitions, and we'll get there and show you on page,
Mayor, while Charles is flipping pages, would you like to have Greg Schumpert forced to read every single definition into the record?
No. Boring read, I promise you. You're.
Sorry, Greg, I thought maybe we'd put you to work there.
I think that's a good idea.
The heading's gonna be enough of a challenge as it is.
You'll be nodding off.
So, page 173 of this ordinance, we have garage, and what we did there was we had called out the size of the garage as to be 21 by 21, and we know that's okay. Well, somebody's just playing with me here because I got page.
Well, it's number 92.
If you're in the definition section. If you're in the definition section, look for definition number 92.
Okay, yeah. So, a lot of our problems that we've seen on some of the houses coming in have been two-car garages, but they're 17 foot by so-so, and so we wanted to define what you could really fit two cars in the garage. We do know that, just as with everything in this ordinance, it's not perfect, and there may be some people come back and say, hey, I know how to build a really good 19 and a half by 20 or 21, and it goes great with this plan and so forth, and those are just things that we consider, but right now there is a definition for that, okay? Look at definition 106. That is a homeless center, and that's defined as any facility that provides any one or more of the following supportive services for indigent or near indigent individuals and their families with no regular, secure, independent residential address of their own. Supportive services include but not limited to clothing, overnight lodging, provision of food, meals, or beverages, financial advice or assistance, and reestablishing various governmental documents on welfare, disability, or other governmental benefits
assistance in obtaining permanent housing, medical counseling, treatment, psychological counseling and treatment, and/or supervision, assistance in recuperating from the effects of, refraining from the use of drugs and or alcohol, nutritional counseling, employment counseling, job training and placement, showers, clothes, laundry and restrooms, and other personal care services and child care facilities, providing such support services on occasional, temporary, intermittent basis, and an accessory use to another primary use shall not be defined as homeless center. So we need to know that where we're at there. However, when such accessory use exceeds either 7 consecutive days or 14 days in calendar year, the facility shall be required to obtain zoning approval and a certificate of occupancy for a homeless center, specifically identifying the supportive uses to be provided, the staff or volunteer ratio, the skill training level of staff, and the operating hours numbers. Bless you. It is like Sim said earlier, that we can get into a lot of arguments or discussions with people about what things say in a zoning ordinance or what they say they are and what they really are. And there's clear definition of what certain things are. And in order for us to define that, we needed to define that and have it in our definition. So now we go to should have had all these marked, but I did in the other one. It's number 176, overnight shelter day use. So you can see where we're going with all this. A temporary non-residential facility that provides intermittent safe shelter and incidental services for homeless persons and their families for day use only. The overnight shelter night use is a temporary residential facility that provides overnight accommodations for incidental services for homeless persons or families on short-term basis. Includes 30 to 60 square foot per bed, bathroom, kitchen, and on staff, not for day use. And then you take these definitions too, and you hope that you have all these definitions in your charge too, so there's no difference of opinion and everybody's on the same page. Then we get to the porch definition, because that's been one that we've had to get creative over the past and try to compromise to make sure things were workable with some people on their infill lots. And the definition of outdoor covered area generally on the front facade of the house that provides area for sitting or outdoor dining, for interacting with neighbors, and for providing shade from heat and protection from the rain, so that the persons dwelling in the structure can easily step outside and enjoy a private area to view a surrounding streetscape. Unless otherwise allowed by the municipal development director, the minimum depth of a porch is 5 feet. A porch is different from any entry alcove or an architectural overhang feature, because it provides a safety security function for those in the dwelling unit. In order to perform a security function and provide this view for the surrounding street, all or most of the porch shall be outside the main support walls of the building. No portion of entry shall count as part of the total square foot calculation of the porch. However, a porch should always include access from the front door to the sidewalk or street. As such, every part of the porch beyond the main support walls may be right, center, the front yard, setback, or side. And with that, I shall be done with my part.
Thank you, Charles. This is a public hearing, so we're going to open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of this item? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing, and we'll move on to item 8.10. Greg Strumpet.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you tonight ordinance number 2895, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2 zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell, Section 15 Executive State Residential 64, EE 64 District, Section 17 Single Family Residential 10, SF 10 District, Section 18 Single Family Residential 7.5, SF 7.5 District, Single Family Residential 6, SF 6 District, Section 20 Townhouse Residential, TH District, patio homes, zero lot line, single-family attached homes, townhomes, and two-family homes, duplexes. Section 21, multifamily residential, MF District, apartments. Section 22, Texas Heritage, TX District. Section 30, heavy commercial, VC District. Section 30A, Research and Technology Park District, RT. Section 32, use regulations, 1A, residential zoning districts, and 1B, non-residential zoning districts, charts, and Section 44, definitions, copies of which are attached hereto as Exhibits A through L and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability and providing an effective date.
Mr. Fenner, before we get started, I just want to tell the council, look, there's a lot of work and effort that went into this process. You made a comment that stuck out sometime during your presentation, and you said that this isn't perfect, right? That's a great comment. It's not perfect. There's 347 pages, and I think there may be some tweaking that needs to be done. We'll open it up for discussion, but overall, man, that's a lot, and we certainly appreciate your effort in getting us this far. Council, who has comments?
Okay, I'm going to start. Fenner, you read so much, I wanted to read also. So I would say I appreciate the uptick in square footage requirements, but I do believe we have overshot some of our requirements. In my opinion, the requirements for square footage in certain zones are too much. The ask, in my opinion, in SF6, SF7, and townhomes are too much. I will tell you what I do suggest in a moment, and we can talk about it. I would say I do appreciate the uptick in the garage size. That makes sense. I would say I'm disappointed in the definition of porch. If infilled porches are a problem, let's define infilled porch versus new construction porch. I don't know. A 5-foot porch across the board is lowering standards. That doesn't, is it?
That's not what it is. What we're saying is, in any of the requirements in the lower districts, it says 33% of the frontage. And the main part of that was it had to be a functional porch.
Sure.
So defined as a functional porch, because a lot of these were 2-foot porches, 2 foot in width, and that's not really a porch. And so that's really where that came from. And then the definition on the out.
Yeah, so right now, you have an or in the definition in each zoning classification. So if I go to SF6 or SF7, so on down the line, what I find is that there's an or. You can build 33% of the front facade or an 8-foot by 12-foot. So people will go to Charles and they'll say, hey, I'm building across 33% of the front facade, and it just so happens that my porch is 1 foot deep. And then an argument ensues, and we say, no, look, that's not a functional porch, we're not going to approve that. And so we wanted to bring clarity to that and have a written number in there. And so when Charles presented that number to P&Z, 5 foot seemed acceptable as a number that would be, when you're using 8 foot by 12 foot, you got to do 8 foot by 12 foot. When you're using the part of the or that is the 33% of the front facade, now you know it can't be less than 5 feet deep. And that has been an argument with folks from time to time who wanted to do a very thin, non-functional porch. So that was part of the reason for the definition. And then all that language in the text of the definition, a whole bunch of that is revolving around the idea that I will use the belly button example. Is my porch an innie or an outie? And we've had folks come forward and build a porch where you get lost in a little cave. Porch is not cave, but we didn't have a definition that allowed us to say that, right? And so it just seemed wise to define that porch is what you would typically imagine in your mind as a porch, which is a thing that goes out, not a thing that goes in. And so that was the attempt in that definition to clarify that.
Right. If in certain zones, so we're saying the definition of porch will vary zone to zone. So right now, if I'm a builder in SF10 and I want to build a 5-foot porch, is this telling me I can build a 5-foot porch in SF10?
Right now, today, it is true that you can build a 5-foot deep porch as long as it covers 33% of the front facade of the house.
Okay, I hear that.
Right, yeah. Right now, I might come in and argue with you about making it 4 feet or 3 feet or 2 feet wide. So this is an increase in that standard by saying I'm going to define it to be a truly functional porch.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's good. I
Okay.
think my thought process was 5 foot wide, right? So I was reading the definition wrong.
Okay, I
So-
understand, right, yeah.
No,
that-
it's depth.
If we're talking depth,
Okay.
right, yeah,
No,
yeah.
That's
Yeah, got
super
it.
good point of clarity.
Okay.
So, Rick, I'm just gonna tell you what I suggest, and feel free to take notes if you want to. SF6, right now, we're at 1,200, the ask is 2,000. I believe that we should be more somewhere in the middle at 1,600. That is gonna be the theme. SF7, right now, we're at 1,500. The ask is for 2,000. I think we should be at 1,750. Townhomes, right now you're at 1,200. The ask is for 2,000. I think you should be at 1,600. So basically, all I did was split the difference. I didn't get super creative here. I'm just stating, I think we're overshooting just a bit on square footage requirements. I like the garage, I like the porch, I like the lot width. I just think if I am a 70-year-old man and I'm by myself, I may not need a 2,000 square foot porch. I may want, if I live in SF7, that would say, hey, I could maybe have a little bit smaller house. It is just me being courteous to certain parts of the population that might need a little bit less square footage requirements. So that is my suggestion. I don't support this as written. Just don't. I think it's an overreach. If it goes forward, I'll vote no. I would vote to amend. I'd vote to table. I'm just telling you, that's where I'm at, right? So I laid it all out there.
Yeah, so I appreciate your comments, and here's my response to you. Your request is exactly what we anticipate happening from developers when they come in and say, hey, that's too high. We want 16. We're not gonna, if we start at 16, where are we gonna end? And it gives us an opportunity to have a better planned development and a better product for the city. Hey, whatever you want, I think it's a mistake to move that away from staff to negotiate down, but that's up for us to discuss. You made a comment about there's people who don't need 2,000 square foot. I agree with you, but we have product that's fixing to hit that's less than 2,000 square feet of home. I happen to believe everybody doesn't need a 3-car garage, but we have it in one of those ordinances, in one of those zoning categories. Not everybody has a 3-car garage, but you can negotiate that down. I think it's a mistake for the council to take that away from staff as they do these P&Ds. Just my opinion. I'll go with whatever you guys want to do.
My only counter is if I am building an infill lot, and let's say I'm gonna give me a generous lot on Griffith, and it's an infill lot, and if I want a variance, I'm not talking to staff. I have to go before the zoning board of adjustment.
but it'll work
And of
its
course,
way
I
through.
encourage those groups to be as tough as they can.
No, but
not to follow.
I agree with you, but
the rules.
it'll go to their staff. They'll do their application, and then it'll go to P&Z, and I can't imagine we wouldn't work with a 70-year-old woman who's trying to build a 1,800 square foot house and tell her, no, you can't. Or a 1,500 square foot home.
With the way, go ahead.
I mean, I don't think it really matters always the age of the person and all that. I am not into mandating a person's porch. What's functional for me may not be functional for someone else. And I don't know if I want to tie it to an age or a gender. I don't want to mandate a person's porch if it's in or out. I'm not into mandating the size of the vehicles you buy to park in your garage. That's a personal preference. And when a person looks at a house, if they lease it, or if they buy it, they not gonna buy it if it doesn't work for them. So functionality, that should be left in the hands of our citizens. Every house I purchased or lived in, I decided if that house would work for me. So I resound the same thing I said last time when this ordinance came up. 2,000 square feet is too much when you look at the diversity of people, ages, income. There are people that work for the city that might make 15 bucks an hour. I don't know if they could purchase a 2,400 square foot house. The garage is over 400 square feet. I think a lot of this stuff need to be left to the person that's purchasing or leasing the property. And I just believe in choice. I believe in diversity. I believe that we should allow our citizens to do that. So I'm not into a lot of mandates when it comes to things like that. I know if I got 2 dually pickups, I can't lease or buy a 17 by 17 house with a garage that size. I'm sensible enough to know that. And I want to think that our citizens are just as sensible and independent, and they're the ones going to have to pay for it, not me. And we look at our taxation and all of that. I mean, my bottom line question is, what is the driving force for this ordinance? In my mind, there would never be a new 1-bedroom house in Terrell. If I want to downsize, my husband dies, if something happens, I'll have to go to a house that was built 40 years ago, 20 years ago, because I can never downsize to a newer structure. Because 2,000 square foot, 1-bedroom house with a 441 square foot house, it would be huge to a single person. And I just want to keep the building coming. I want the people to have the opportunity to live in new structures, regardless of if they're single or if they have 10 children. But they're going to have to live in different areas if their family size is different. You can't have 12 people in your house and live in a house, a 6F house. So my recommendation would be to maybe keep the ordinance the same as it is now for the infill lots. But if you get somebody with $5 million that wants to build, man, $5 million, $40 million and want to build this number of houses, you hold those developers in those areas that's building houses on acreage and hold them to that standard, because they're going to do whatever they need to, because the cost is going to be spread out. I'm thinking about long-time residents. I'm thinking about my children. I'm thinking about people that want to live and reside here in Terrell. I want them to have diversity, and I want them to have choice. And if you take that from people, if you take choice from people, you take away power, okay? So I'm sorry, it's something I'm passionate about, but when I look at these ordinances, you might can't answer that, but what's the driving force? I know the average income for people in Terrell, a 2,400 square foot house minimum.
So,
That's concerning.
Mayor, I feel like I should answer that question. So a couple of different flows of information hitting staff and our planning and zoning board that drove some of these thoughts about bringing them forward. And I'm just going to read a couple of numbers here because I got some notes in front of me. We've got a development with 278 homes where they have already approval of 1,200-foot minimums. We've got another development here in town where they already have approval for 468 units with 1,400 square foot minimums. We've got another development in town where it's 170 lots with 1,200 square foot minimums. We've got another development in town where it's 440 lots, and it is 1,288 square foot minimums. And then we've got two special districts moving forward, one with 1,400 homes, one with about 2,000 homes, and those are also smaller lot size and smaller square foot size. So watching the progress moving forward on those and seeing those sorts of things coming through planning and zoning, one thought was that we have an abundance of existing housing stock and an abundance of existing development deals or zoning in place already, where people through an existing PD or an existing development agreement can build on those smaller square footage sizes that I just listed for you. So looking at that piece of information and then looking at the other piece of information, which is the change in state law. So I get feedback from, for example, folks who are in the Stallings edition, and folks in the Stallings edition say, well, hey, wait a minute. I thought that things were going great in the Stallings edition. We're getting brick homes built. We're getting new stuff built. Some of these are larger, some of them are small, but they're new things coming in that are masonry. And it was due to the period of time where the city was able to have a 100% masonry standard. So sometime I want to say in the 05, 06 period of time, there was a change in our ordinances, and pardon me if I have that date wrong, but it's somewhere right in that period of time. Folks were dissatisfied with the area that was developed north of Town North, where there was not very much masonry used in the homes up in that area. So that came forward as a complaint to council, and council, a couple of years, or right around the time I showed up in 2008, had made that change to go to the 100% masonry standard. That worked fairly well for an extended period of time, because up until, I think, 2019, the city had the authority to, under state law, have a masonry standard in place that would say you've got to go build a brick house. That change in the state law happened, and we started to see some houses get built that could be wood frame houses or hardy plank and that sort of thing. In fact, under the current state law, you can build a metal house. And we think that's kind of a strange state law, but they don't ask us, right? So getting that feedback from folks in the Stallings edition and other places, we said, well, okay, what could we do about that? And I think this is the point that the staff kind of says, look, in our mind, this isn't a decision about, well, what's the right number of square foot? This is a question about, do you want your folks who are building houses to be able to come forward knowing there's no masonry standard allowed by the state government anymore? Do you want them to come engage staff in a conversation? And staff then say, oh, okay, we see that you're going to build a smaller home, but you're willing to trade off and do a development deal that makes that a masonry house, and that's great. We got a win-win there. If that's a function you want your staff to perform, we're saying, you know, we see that you would get benefits from that over the long term. And I had a conversation with a local home builder, small-scale home builder, and I said, look, if somebody comes forward and says, I'd like to build a smaller lot house, a smaller number of square foot house in an infill area, and says, you know what, I'm going to build a 100% masonry house or an 85% or, you know, something in the realm of reasonable, would that be something that the city would say, great, let's get a development agreement queued up and bring that thing forward? Everything you just said gives me confidence that the rational choice would be made, that staff would say, sounds great, that's what council was looking for. And we would bring that development agreement forward that would allow us to say, yep, that new home in that infill area is going to be a masonry home, and that's what this process was designed to allow. So when you talk about why is the 2,000 square foot number being brought forward, it's because what we were looking at existing entitlements, and what we were hearing is complaints about our lack of ability to enforce a brick standard. And I don't want to say that I'm lobbying for it one way or the other. I just want to tell you that was the rationale in bringing it forward. Okay, the rationale in bringing forward a definition of garage and a definition of porch is that those are things where people come in and say, show me that definition. And we say, well, it's not defined. So I got to put a definition out there. We previewed the definition with the Planning and Zoning Board. They liked the version of that definition. They voted yes on that definition. And so we're just providing that to you as, hey, we got complaints from home builders that we didn't have definitions for porch and garage. So we provided definitions that we thought made sense, and Planning and Zoning endorsed them, and that's why they're here in front of you. So anyway, that's the why answer. So I'll leave it at that.
I don't want to move out of Terrell because we're making ordinances or decisions that's wiggling around the Texas standards. I know there's things we like, they're personal preferences. There's things that I like that I'm sure even you guys, my co-council members, don't like. I'm sure there's some things you guys like that I don't like. But I do not want to feel like I'm forced to maneuver or move out or somewhere else because I can't follow the Texas standard. I love Terrell. I was raised in Terrell. I was raised in a frame house. That was my parents' preference. That's what they could afford. Didn't make me feel any better than one of my bus riders or classmates that didn't live, that lived in a brick house. I didn't feel inferior. I didn't feel any different. So some of these things are about choices, affordability, and just being able to live independently in a home where you're happy. So I just think some of these standards are trying to maneuver around what's already been set, even when you talk about the standards for Texas. Now, if somebody's building 170 homes, 468 homes, maybe those are the developers we need to go to and say, hey, we will have a 2,441 feet standard, minimum standard. I believe they can adhere to it if they're building 468 houses. Now, I don't think it's a good idea to, because the Stallings area is complaining, to just say every house in the Stallings addition will be 2,441 square foot houses. I think that's not very smart. But what I'm saying is people should have choice again, and maybe if we just say, hey, this is what we have for infill, we know we can have developers agreements, and we can go from there. But it's still a concern because I know that the city is negotiating, or they're the ones that's writing those agreements. That's where it starts. So if I'm gonna build a house in Terrell, and we got the city staff initiating that, if I'm gonna build that house, I'm gonna just about do what the developer says, or what the agreement says that's initiated by city staff. So I'm just trying to be clear-headed. I'm trying to think in 30 years, 40 years. I don't want to make any decision today that's gonna make it difficult for me, people that have an average income, that's just still good working people, that's lifelong residents, or even somebody that want to move here because of our diversity and what they can offer the city. So I'm just speaking just personal now, based on this ordinance.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Those comments are well taken. I'll address them, but Grady, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, we're not, as Mr. Sims, we're not exactly saying that the house have to be 2,000 square feet, right?
So
I'm just clarifying because I want to make a company. Is that a yes or no, or?
if y'all vote on these standards, then the question is, what can I do by right without any special agreement, okay? By right, with no special agreement, you would be able to do a minimum of a 2,000 square foot house and the garage minimum as well, okay? If you wanted to do smaller, you'd have to come forward to staff and you'd have to work through a process with staff to get an agreement, and then it would maybe have to be voted on, okay? That's the way this is written, right? Okay.
So here's my comment to you, is we need to set parameters for development. And that's all we're trying to get done right now, and everybody needs to be on the same playing field. You can't have different zoning in different districts, I don't believe. Can you?
Different zoning and different.
You
It's gotta
can
be
have,
citywide.
you can have different square footage requirements for houses in different districts. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like in District 5 or District 4?
No,
Oh,
not
that's what
district council districts,
Exactly.
different zoning districts, different zoning districts. If you have an
Yes.
SF6,
Right.
if
No,
you have
I
an
got that.
SF6,
So,
SF6 is the same all over the place.
so thank you. So
Yeah.
that was my point. So what we don't want, and what I don't want to happen in the future, is for there be houses being built in District 4 and 5, and a different product being built in 2 and 3, and those, and then you're not, you don't have any say. Because I can tell you, that some of these folks are gonna go and build something better in 4 and 5, and then they're gonna go to 2 and 3, and they're gonna build the cheapest thing they can. So we put those ordinances in place to say, hey, you know what? If you're gonna build something over here, we want to make sure that it's quality for these individuals that are staying there. That's
Mayor,
just that's where I think we're trying to get to.
I think, the way I look at it, I mean, the city has to have some type of means to govern these housing, these building projects, because I got a house that's in my district, 2-story home, 1-car garage. I don't want 2-story home, 1-car garage, barely a front yard for the kids to play in and no backyard. You know what I'm thinking? If they go and park their cars or use their garage as an extra room, they're gonna park on the street.
Yeah.
So my thing is, there has to be some standards. The standards, what we said is not gonna be perfect. But as the mayor said, maybe we could somewhat adjust it as we go, but we have to have some type of standards where we can, where we as a council can execute good governance and making sure we have quality homes and have good quality living. That's just my point on it.
And you have to, as you negotiate, you have to have something that you can back off of. You're right. You can't start low and then go. It doesn't give you anywhere to go.
Right.
And I
And
want
that's
that.
just my point.
And
And
I-
I agree with you. I don't like, government's job is not to mandate anything to anybody. But we do set standards and parameters of what we expect for the city. And then we can work backwards from that. If and again, I won't be mayor forever, but while I'm mayor, and the example that Royce used or you're using, and we're not working with our citizens, that's a problem for me.
Yes.
Right? That's a problem for me, that we're not listening to what the demand, especially if it's an infill lot.
And the house has to fit. When we get these standards like that, and you got to have that many square feet on a 60-foot lot, that's when the house goes up, so they can follow the mandates that we've set in place. I mean, you could see a smaller house on that lot with a bigger garage or a bigger yard for the kids. But when you have these type of mandates, the house has to go up on smaller lots. This is sensible what we already have for infill, for what we have now throughout the city, especially for infill. I mean, you're gonna be passing something to your neighbor. If you try to put a 2,500, 2,800 square foot house on a 60-foot lot, it's gonna go up, or you're gonna be opening your window, giving your neighbor high fives. The house has to fit. And for some reason, we wanna think that bigger is better. Ask my doctor, is bigger better? Okay? I don't know if bigger is always better. That has nothing to do with quality. We got to get it right in our head.
Hey,
Bigger is not always better. Ask the Toyota Corolla. If they're fighting with the Avalon, is bigger better? So that's me. That's my joke for tonight. But I think this council and the mayor and the staff, I think I have verbalized and communicated my concerns with this ordinance, and especially maybe if we can just do something with infill lots. A lot of citizens own infill lots. A lot of people are saving those lots if kids or grandkids want to have. Maybe we can keep the standards where they are for those infill lots, and I would go for that with the minimum for the bigger
Mayor?
development.
hey, wait, before we go on, I just want to say, I'm so proud of this council and the discussions that we're having. They're civil, right? And everybody gets a chance to say what that's on their
But wait,
mind.
I haven't finished.
Well, I know, but we're gonna come back to you.
We're not done
I'm
with
gonna put a
round
time
one yet.
limit on you, but hey, briefly, Mike wants to say something, and May Ronnie needs to say what she's got.
Councilwoman, you want to go first, or? I just want to, I had a process thing to say, but you go first, yeah.
What I'd like to, so I, to a certain extent, that I don't hear a consensus at this time. While, we don't have the vote laid out at this time, I just don't hear a consensus. One, I really appreciate staff, working and bringing us something to review. I certainly am in favor of and will be motioning at some point to do an amendment to the Section 21 multifamily residential district, as Mike alluded to. And I hear where our staff and our city manager are looking towards the future and why they're trying to put in place the 2,000-foot square minimum to protect the quality of the homes. And sometimes, you have a few bad apples that ruin it for the rest. So we have to be thinking about those that may not be trying to have quality standards in our community. What I don't, when I compare the proposed districts and the changes here, and I compare those to other cities, what I don't see is a lot of, or I wish I could see more variation in the SF houses that we are looking at, the residential housing. So I see we have the SF6, SF7.5, SF10, SF16. If I pull up the city of Richardson, if I pull up Mansfield, if I pull up Little Elm, if I pull up Rowlett, looking at maybe what Terrell is trying to become in the future while maintaining some of the traditional households that we have, I see that they have additional single-family housing standards. While we have the SF6, they might have SF5, they might have SF9, to give them a little bit more of variability. So I would really like to see that added to our districts to provide that variability that I hear, Councilman Royce and Stephanie and Mr. Simpson mentioning that they'd like to see in the neighborhoods and protect the housing options that we have in our community. So once again, I see where we're trying to protect the housing standards. I would like to see additional SF, single-family housing options in our districts, and I do support the multifamily amendment that I will be making.
Okay, so let me thank you. I'm going to try to take various things that folks have said and kind of piece some things together here. So remember how we've done this sort of thing in the past. The beauty of the fact that you guys are the elected officials is that when you make a motion, if it gets 3 votes, it's binding, okay? So let's contemplate what Councilwoman Velasquez just said. We had an instance in the past, the last time we did our zoning ordinance, a couple of years ago, we were doing our zoning ordinance, and we had a council person raise his hand, and he said, this is a perfectly good zoning ordinance update, like it, happy, because we do this every couple of years and update and make sure that we're keeping up with what's going on. And Councilman Royce raised his hand and said, man, I've noticed that a couple of people built houses recently where there's no window on the front. And that seems really odd to me, that we would build a house and there's no front window. I said, well, Councilman, I'm sorry, I just apologize for that happening, but there's no rule on that right now. And so one of the times we were doing a zoning ordinance, we kind of talked through how to do this, and it's really the same template. If you have something in this that you would say to yourself, you know what, I kind of like this whole thing, but I'd like to change this part, then what you do is essentially the same thing that Councilman Royce did a few years ago. You say, well, I'm going to move to approve this thing with the exception that, and in his case it was, all of the residential districts get the added requirement of an architectural standards that says that they have to have at least one window on the front facade. Okay, great, that got 3 votes, but I actually think that one was unanimous, move on down the line. So, same thing I was discussing with Councilwoman Velasquez related to this multifamily issue. We really do have a problem in town where, for some reason in the past, we have these little postage stamps of tiny, tiny little land areas that are zoned multifamily. I don't know how you could possibly put a multifamily apartment complex on it, and we seem to all like a multifamily apartment complex that is robust enough to be run well and managed well, right? And so, well, that's 10 acres, right? The Magnolia Grove one's 10 acres. We've got several others in town that are good apartment complexes and mix of incomes and all that sort of good stuff. But gosh, if you can't get your multifamily apartment complex built on 10 acres, so I said, okay, Councilwoman Velasquez, that's really something staff missed. We didn't notice that. She did. She brought it forward, and I would say it would be very simple to say, hey, I'm going to move to approve this thing with the exception that multifamily, we change minimum lot area from 1 acre to 10 acres. Boom. So if y'all have something that you can coalesce on that can get 3 votes related to this 2,000 square foot issue, my comment to you would be, I'm hearing, I actually think I am hearing a thread that might get a vote, and that is, I think that it would be a perfectly valid motion to say that the standards stay the same, or maybe the standards use Councilman Royce's numbers in infill, and that in newly developed areas, that these are that the standards stay the way they are. That is easy for us to write up. The reason you have a first reading and a second reading is if council makes a motion and says, I want the 2,000 square foot to stay the same in infill, and the standards to remain as presented in the remaining of the areas, you're giving staff a big negotiating power for the big guys who come in. And when they want to build 700 houses, they're going to come negotiate. And we're going to have something that, as the mayor would say, I got a thing I can come off of, right? So that's an important element of it. So I'm not trying to direct anybody about how to vote or make a motion, but remember, you can say, look, P&Z voted on this and approved it unanimously. So if you want to say, hey, I honor P&Z, then I would say figure out a way you can make a motion on it and give it a little light edit in your motion, and then see what you can get 3 votes on. So I'll stop there on process, okay?
So, say one more thing. I just have one question for you. You don't have to, if you don't know the numbers, you don't know it. But when I do the calculation from, let's say, 6F, the minimum standard now is 1,200 square feet living area. We moved to 2,000, that's 60% bigger. When you look at the development agreements, if you have to say an average, if you're doing an agreement and you get them to do 100% masonry or whatever, multiple different style roofs or whatever, is it reasonable? What is your average on square footage that you give? I just couldn't see you saying our minimum is 2,000, but in 6F, I'm gonna let you build a 1,200. Is it that negotiable, 60%?
So let me try to answer that,
Let me
because
see if he'll answer it first.
that's fine,
If
go
you didn't
ahead.
know it, I'll let you answer it, but let's see, Mr. Fenner, the director.
Yes,
Yes,
it's possible.
it is possible to go from 2,000 minimum to negotiate 1,200 square feet. 60%.
I'm not gonna be the only one that does that. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
you won't have to approve it, but if we get a house, like today, I spent 2 hours.
Seems like a lot, that's why I was asking that.
2 hours with the group, with DR coming in and saying, okay, that's not a problem,
Right.
that's not a problem. Well, if we get 3 different roof pitches on each facade, and then we get transom windows, we get board and batten, we get shingle roofs, and we get all these, all the added qualities, a streetscape and all that, can we go down to 1,600? And that's them, okay, for
Yeah.
their production of that. If we get somebody that comes into a neighborhood where there's a group of houses, and you'll see several of these, where there's 1,400 square foot, 1,600 square foot, 1,800 square foot, maybe 1,000 square foot. And they come and combine 2 lots together, and they're not quite there, but they'll build a 100% home. And what we're seeing a lot of, they're getting close to 2,000.
Okay.
But some of those areas, the market, you'd be just way overbuilding in the market. So if had 1,200 square foot homes there, and they come in and say, I'll do all this, and
Yeah, yeah.
this, and I'd like to build a 1,300 square foot home, that should be a very, very good consideration to allow them to do that and build the quality that we would like to see, which the quality is, hey, you get a list of things to pick from.
Right.
Just like sharing with me today, DR shared with me the things that they have for quality upgrades from Salina and other places. There's 50 types of upgrades. Like I said, carriage doors on the garages that don't make much expense, the transom windows, the fake dormers, all those added that give you, it's not always about big, no. The big's not always quality.
Yeah, I'll give you an example
I
of.
should not have said.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. No, okay, so.
You want to add now, but
No, I
want
just
to
want to,
hear that from
yeah,
you.
I was only going to give you a specific
chime in.
example. The specific example is, we've got development that's kind of moving through the process. We have to really twist their arm because it's, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'm letting Greg finish here. Yeah.
He was just telling
Okay.
me that they've done, you guys have done agreements like that, and I want to compliment you and thank you for that.
Yeah.
But just when I see 60%, 600 extra, or 800 square feet, that's a lot to me
No,
that you
I
would
understand.
negotiate. So that's kudos to you. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are, you're the man.
All right.
Okay, I'm
So,
sorry.
no, I was just going to give you a specific example, and that is one of the large ones that is moving through that's related to an annexation. They want to do a voluntary annexation with conditions. The thing they provided, and this was a thing we learned from another city, to use that, Councilwoman, is what they said was, well, how about we do, and we're talking about 1,000 houses here, and they said, well, how about we do 10% of them are allowed to be as small as 1,200 square foot. 10% of them have to be more than, I think, 2,300 square foot, and the average of the remaining has to be 1,800, right? And so there's more than one way to skin how you do that math, right? So Charles gave you some good examples, and I just wanted to use a specific that's going through the process now.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, I have something for Councilwoman Stephanie, because I think we can probably get to an agreement. So I hear what staff has said and the mayor has said on new development, and there's a lot of good logic there. Okay, now if I just go to infill, whether it's Mineral Wells or Griffith, we have infill. We are an old community. We're gonna have infill. My goal is to be equitable when I think about infill. So what I will tell you is, I still like the porch requirement. I still like the garage requirement, because if I think of, even in those older neighborhoods, if I don't have a garage that people can get in, and infield already has shorter driveways, then I have too many cars on the street, which is neighborhood integrity, or I have cars with one wheel propped up in the yard, or I have cars parked in the yard, and then I'm really griping at Fenner, right? Because I'm that guy that's angry about you parking in your yard. So I would say I don't have much wiggle room on infield porches and garages, but there are some circumstances that do need to come to the zoning board of adjustments that just say, hey, my lot just doesn't work. I need a one-car garage. Man, I'll nod to that all day long if it makes sense, right? And that's really a group discussion. But what I was going to tell you on the infield lot, and Stephanie, and I don't know if you wrote this down, but if on infield, if I'm SF6, it was at 1,200. They're asking for 2,000. I'm asking for you to consider 1,600. On 7.5, I'm asking you to consider 1,750. On townhomes, I'm asking you to consider 1,600. So that's my ask, and heck, maybe we can get it buttoned up tonight. I don't know, we've done better than I thought.
Councilman, can you clarify, were you saying that related to infill?
I was saying that related to infill and not new development. I would hold these standards on new development.
So 2,000 for new developments.
I would hold that because there is, I would say staff laid out very good logic. So hooray for staff, because the burden of proof is on you. And I think you did a good job of laying out your case for new development. I do agree with Councilwoman Stephanie on some infield adjustments. I just think maybe we can get to a number tonight. Maybe it has to go to another workshop, but I think we're almost there.
There's a lot of work that's been done here, so if we can have a vote on it and get 3 votes, I would be in favor of doing that, rather than, because we gotta have a second reading, rather than have them rework everything, because these, we're getting closer. Is there another ask? May Ronnie have an ask?
Ronnie had something, and then I'd ask for Stephanie to just comment back, right? Because this is now a
Well, I'm trying to get down all the amendments.
Sure.
So there's a SF7 for 1750, there's a SF6 at 1600, there's a townhomes at 1600, and what's the other? Mayor Ronnie? I mean, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, I don't want to disrespect you there.
An amendment to Section 21 multifamily residential districts, specifically Section 21.4, area regulations for multifamily. A, size of lots, so that the minimum lot area be changed from 1 acre to 10 acres.
Okay.
For multifamily? In multifamily,
In multifamily, right now we have the problem where in quite a few locations, some councils in the past went crazy and zoned really small areas as multifamily. I'm sorry to say it that way, but it's very strange. You can look around the city and find these little stamps of multifamily. And it would just be easier for us to manage if we said, you know what, if you're going to build a brand new apartment complex, can it please be well organized and well planned on a large assemblage of land? And that's essentially what this is. I think it's the most common sense thing we got going here.
okay, makes sense to me. And then I would also ask staff for a definition of infield, right? What does that mean now? Give me the definition of infield.
Charles,
Okay.
you want to say that, or you want me to?
Infill will be anything that there's an existing subdivision. So houses built in that area, so redevelopment's a different situation. If there's homes in an area that somebody came in and tore them all down, that would be a different case. I will tell you that most of what we have are platted lots already, okay? And even with what you're suggesting on the 1600, 1750 and these infill lots, you will probably still see developers agreements come through, because some of these lots won't meet the standard widths because they're old platted lots.
Sure.
And to me, that's infill development.
Yeah,
okay?
there's a definition buried in the zoning ordinance, which I'm not going to try to find right now, that I believe says that infill is defined as a lot platted before the year 2000.
And a lot of those lots they don't meet the standards today. And so they turn into a developer's agreement because they may be taking 2 lots that are 30 foot
Sure.
and wanting to put them at 60 foot. Well, now with new standards, they don't meet the 65, just like we have a lot of 25-foot lots. They put them together, that'll be 50-foot lots. And instead of taking them to ZBA, we could take them to here, and stuff like that. So you'll be seeing those too, even in the infill
Trying
lots.
to work with you, Mr. Royce. Let me
Okay,
ask
let's
this question.
go.
We go with the standards, minimizing the number, because the 2,000 sounds like it's a majority consensus that, that's a lot. If trying to work with my fellow councilman, oh man, I almost lost my train of thought. It was about the, with the developers agreement,
Yes.
is there still some wiggle room? Because I heard him say, I want the porch. I want it to be a minimum of 5 feet. I want it to come out and not in. And I'm going, I don't know if you should be orchestrating that. He said, the garage, it ought to be this big. I don't care if you're driving too many coupes or 2 dualies, it ought to be this big, okay?
There
So,
is room.
Is it wiggle room for those things
There is room.
if we do a developer's agreement?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to work with you, Mr.
Because
We're getting
Can I say?
we have the 34 lots that we're talking to today. That's the same situation. Their porch, D.R. Horton doesn't have the 8 by 12 porch concept, but they do have some 6x8 type porches. And with that, with 4 different roof pitches and other things, those are things that we could bring forth in a developer's agreement. That's just one example. So yes, there is always gonna be wiggle room, if people wanna go through the developer's agreement process. Cause we're also gonna give them the opportunity, especially if they're taking old platted lots, which is really considered infill development, which is what we want, and they come in and say, oh, I can't meet the standard, then we can say, well, you can go to the ZBA or you can go through developer's agreement. It's a pretty easy process. And, you know, even at that time, they can say, well, my house was gonna be 1,300 square foot. Well, it's required to be 16. Why don't we do this? And then we come forward and you have an agreement that shows that they have a 1,300 square foot home that they're allowed to build in the infill SF6, which you're required to be 1,600. So there is the option to go even lower. In fact, you're gonna be seeing 3 or 4 in the near future that are just like that. You approved one last week that was actually a bigger lot. It was just on a bigger house. It was on a very small lot, and we were really dealing with the lot. But he was building close to like an 1,896 square foot in an infill development. So you get all kinds of different things. And so we'll work with whoever comes through there if they want to do that. Otherwise, because 2 25-foot lots are platted, if they bring them together, that's considered a replat, and that requires the process to go through. And I can't replat that through P&Z council or as a minor plat until I get some kind of agreement or ZBA signs off on it.
What's your thinking now, knowing that you know the definition of infill lots?
I'm okay with
Would we just
that. You
remain
know
the
why?
same versus?
So Stephanie, I like the definition, and I like that there's a kind of a time period associated with it. That's telling me that everything platted for the first 125 years of the city is eligible for a reduced square footage amount, right? And now we're saying the next 125 years, our bargaining chip is just a little bit bigger. These guys rarely bring us everything that's to standard. I know because I ask, and they're like, well, no, I trimmed this off, and I trimmed this off, and I trimmed off 100 square foot, and I trimmed off a garage bay. So I don't doubt that they will trim the stuff that comes to us. I feel comfortable with that, mainly because it's their job to keep momentum going, right? And new rooftops have to happen for a healthy city. So I have full faith that they will bring me good planned developments, and I feel good that the first 125 years of platting can be eligible for a reduced requirement.
So I think I'm hearing some consensus here on being able to send this to vote. And I want to make sure that I've got everybody, and legal has the right. Have you got it?
I think I do,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, and with permission of you and the council.
Yes.
I think I can see where we could possibly get a motion on it. That would be to approve ordinance 2895, but with these amendments, that for section 18, single-family residential SF 7.5, minimum square footage would be 1,750 square feet.
Those are for infill lots.
For infill lots, yes, I'm sorry, for infill lots. And for residential SF6, which would be single-family residential SF6 district, it would be 1,600 square foot minimum. For section 20.
For infill.
I'm sorry?
I'm trying to follow along. Infill. You got to put the word infill in there.
lots.
Right, yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought, yeah, for
Infill.
infill lots. For townhomes, let's see, let me find it on here. Just a minute here. On the townhomes would be a minimum of 1,600 square feet, and then for
And again, that's for infill.
lots.
In infill lots, yeah.
And finally, on multifamily, this would be from 1 acre increased to 10 acres. And that wouldn't be on an infill. That
That's
would just
any.
be
Yeah.
And this would only be on infill lots with the exception of the multifamily. And any new development would be the standards as set out already.
Yes.
Mr. Royce,
Yes.
what's your objections again to keeping the standards to infill what they are? If they build bigger, we're so proud, because we're gonna get those projects like Councilman Simpson. We're gonna have overachievers, and we're gonna have those houses on the 50-foot lots with one-car garage and this massive, so we're gonna have those people. Clarify again, what's your objection to keep what we have for infill? I'm especially thinking about that, because I've built on some 50-feet lots.
Councilwoman, in my tenure, I've always pushed standards to be just a little bit higher and to raise the notch just a little bit. So when I leave the dais, the standard would have been just a little bit better for the next person behind me. If you're uncomfortable, tell me exactly what you're uncomfortable with. I don't think we should stay at the current minimum square footage. If I need to come down 100 square foot per each, I can do it, but that's about as low as my bargaining chip will allow me to go without heartburn. And because there's still a process, Ms. Councilwoman, of if the lot doesn't dictate that size of house, there's still a process to come forward and say, I need a reduced square footage because it makes sense. I need a reduced garage because it makes sense. But as a standard, I do not want to hand everybody the lowest standard possible.
It's not the lowest standard, because there's a variety of lot sizes in each community. And standard, just because a house is 1,200 square feet, I don't know if that standard is lower. It's, to me, you guys are trying to equate the size to standards.
I will talk
Bad-
directly about.
Maybe tell me
I will
what
talk
standard means.
directly
Maybe I'm
about
not understanding
my
that.
lot. My lot, I think I'm in SF6. My lot is probably 62 foot wide.
Okay.
My house is exactly 1,300 square foot. I'm literally saying for new developments, I feel like there could be an elevated standard. So I'm literally living in what I think the standard should raise a little bit. I have a 400 square foot garage. I have a 20 by 20, and I can park 4 cars in my driveway. To me, my objection is, to answer clearly, is I notch it up. I always have. I've always raised the standard a little bit. And when you look throughout our community, I got on council in 2016, 2017, you will see pockets of houses that, like, oh, that's new. That's a new house beside a 100-year-old house. Man, that's neat, right? That's revitalization. And it's just revitalization to me. And it's notching it up.
Okay. Thank you. So,
But I would, I would land somewhere in between Councilwoman Thomas and Councilmember Royce, because as I looked at the different communities that I mentioned earlier, if I was looking at SF7, they might have been at 850, 950, and above. If I was looking at SF6, they may have been at 1,000, 1,200. So those are somewhat in line, at least the SF6, with what I'm seeing as far as our current standard. And then other communities have kind of a not lower standard, but a lower square footage to the home.
what we don't know is, in these other communities, are they behind the city of Terrell in redoing their ordinances for the same reason? We don't know that. So I don't know when those square footage was passed or not. It might have been when you could do 100% masonry. I don't have that, I don't know. So what we need is a motion. And then if it fails, we'll go back and work it again. But is there a motion on 10-8? I meant 9-10?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve ordinance 19.
With the amendments of infill lots of SF 7 to 17.
Hold on. We've got the wrong.
Are we?
We need to start over.
2895?
2895.
Oh, okay. Right, with those amendments that we discussed earlier, with SF 7 at 1750 and SF 6 at 1600, with townhomes at 1600, all infill lots, right? And then also the multifamily, 1 acre, moving from 1 acres to 10 acres. Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda, oh, wait, you know what? I need a motion to recess for just about 5 minutes, please. Is there a motion?
Motion to recess.
I have a motion from Councilwoman Mayrani Velazquez, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second?
I second.
I have a second from Grady Simpson. All in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, it was.
Not really. Not really.
Hey, it's the first time you heard us talk this much.
I don't know how that's gonna be communicated to people.
It's gonna be a long night, isn't it?
Yep. We'll reconvene into our regular session. And our next item on the agenda is 9.1, discuss schedule for upcoming tax increment refinance zone. Topics, this is Mr. Godwin.
Thank you, Mayor. I've pushed every button on here, so I'm gonna give this back to you. So, I'm not gonna read any definitions to you, that's the good news, but I am gonna take a few minutes of your time. As I think Mr. Sims briefed you in an executive session last week, or at least very recently, that we have a number of TERZs, tax increment refinance or reinvestment zones. There's one in the city right now, TERZ number 1. We're talking about 4 more, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are in various processes, various progress. TERZ number 3 is the farthest along, and that is the Anthony Properties, the Las Lomas project. It's pretty far along. Some of the others, we've got a development working with a Centurion American, one with the Hines folks, and then one with the Hunt property on the east side of town. And so we kind of just want to give you, I guess, notice / warning that there's a lot coming up. There's a lot of meetings coming up. There's a lot of agenda items that you'll be seeing over the next couple of months, and maybe a little bit longer than that. We have kind of an ambitious schedule. We think one of the developers will probably be able to fit the tight schedule. The others are not as far along. And again, it's Anthony Properties. This is the one that's the furthest along. I told Mr. Sims this afternoon, I kind of made a list of all the documents, just the documents that need to be written and reviewed and revised and approved by you, and I came up with 49. And that's just documents. So there's a lot of other things besides just those documents. And so there's a lot of processes that need to be done. A lot of that's not hard work. It's just a matter of doing it. Some of those are negotiations, pretty tough negotiations in some cases with developers. So tonight, February 8th, is a scheduled preview, which is what I'm giving you. And then next week, we'll have a few different things. Specifically, the most important on this, I think, is that we'll have Jason Hughes. Jason Hughes is the FA, their financial advisor for the city of Terrell from Hilltop Securities, and he'll be here to talk to you about some of the finances. We're talking about many millions of dollars that TERZs will generate, and so he will be here to discuss that with you, how that works, how projects are financed, how projects are repaid by revenues generated from the TERS. We'll also talk a little bit next week about the land uses, specifically the maps. I think you may have seen some of those. Those are changing fairly often. 3 of them are changing. One of them not really even been done. 2 of them are changing a lot. One of them is pretty fixed. So we want to talk about specific land uses. So again, you know what to expect. One of them is almost all industrial. 2 of them are a majority residential, different types of residential. Some of them include commercial. And then, of course, when you have different types of land uses, you have an awful lot of infrastructure to build to support those, and also to make sure that you have things like traffic safety, you have sufficient fire safety and sufficient water pressure, things like that. I will also be giving you draft project plans and finance plans. Project plans and finance plans are required by state law for each TERS, so you'll get 8 of those next week. They're about 8 or 9 pages long. I don't necessarily recommend all of them, reading all of them, because they're almost exactly the same. There's basically a template for each of those, so they vary in specific places, and to the extent that we have time next week, I'll talk about that, or in the future at any rate. But we have to have a project plan. The major purpose of the project plan, as you might guess, is to identify the projects the TERS is going to create and pay for. And so that's going to be the water lines, the sewer lines, the street signs, the parks in some cases, all of the infrastructure that will be dedicated to the city once it's finished. Those will be listed on the project plan, and those are reimbursable with TERS funds. The finance plan does all of that, plus it also predicts how much money all those things are going to cost, when they're going to get built, so you know when you have cash draws coming in. And then the other big part of that is the revenue side. How much revenue is this new development going to generate, and when's that revenue going to come in, so that you've got enough money to pay your bills every year for up to 40 years, because TERS will probably recommend each of these be set up to last as much as 40 years to pay off the debt for those different kinds of things. And then finally, we'll have a resolution that we'll ask you to pass next week, which will be kind of a simple resolution, because this is a lengthy process, because we're trying to partner with 4 different major developers and perhaps some smaller developers as well. And also, most importantly, in this case, we're going to be trying to partner in a big way with the county. And the Kaufman County's participation in this is crucial to our success. And so we're going to ask council to approve a resolution committing to the process and committing these TERSs, so that the county knows that you are, in fact, officially on board through that resolution. 2 weeks from now, we'll actually pass some more formal resolutions calling public hearings. We'll have 2 different public hearings that we'll do sometime in March. I'll talk about that in a minute. We'll again review the land uses, talk about those kinds of things, because those are going to be constantly evolving. And then the last thing on that page, the TERS number 1. So the TERS number 1 is one that's existing now. I'm talking fast, but because I want to go home. I'm sorry. No, because a lot of this is not terribly interesting to you, and it may not make a lot of sense. So if you need to slow down, if you have questions, ask me. But my point here is just to get across to you that these things are coming, so you have at least, you don't want to be caught by surprise, because there's a lot of stuff coming, and it really is big stuff. And I'll just take a moment for an advertisement here. The 4 different developments that I've been working on, one for a couple of months and the others for a year or more, the potential ad valorem tax value for all of those 4 developments are roughly equivalent to the entire city of Terrell right now. So it's a big deal. Terrell is an attractive place for a lot of folks. They want to build, and we want them to build, but we want them to build really well, and so that's the conflict sometimes. We want to get as good as we can handle. We want to push them really hard, but we don't want to run them off, because even though we're an attractive location for a lot of development, if we push too hard, there's other places that are attractive to development as well. So that's kind of the constant struggle we have there. But TERS number 1, going back to that was our brief commercial timeout there. TERS number 1 has some properties, some tracks that we want to move over to this new TERS. And so it's a mechanical process. We had to call a public hearing and have the public hearing next month, where we remove certain tracks from TERS number 1 over to TERS number 2. Yes, ma'am. I don't know.
So imagine yourself, geographically speaking, they're numbered. That's the part that John's saying he doesn't know. Geographically speaking, if I'm standing at the spur 557 interchange with Los Lomas, and I walk down to the end of that big cul-de-sac, there's some land just a little bit, I'm standing in that zone that's going to change from TERS 1 to TERS 2. And it runs a little bit distance to the west, a little bit distance to the east. That chunk really ought to be in TERS number 3, I think.
3.
And it is currently in TERS number 1. So we have to take an action related to that. It's probably not more than 20 acres or so.
So from the spur, the track that's by the spur, north of the spur.
South of the spur.
Spur is going to go into TERS 3.
A small tract, yeah, yeah.
And those are all properties that are owned by Anthony Properties, the Las Lomas Properties, and so it's just to get all of that, it's gonna be a single development, and this is gonna be almost 100% industrial. Get that single development into one TERS rather than being in two different TERSes.
Can I say that in terms of the detail of that, we have a map of that. I'll get into the details of all of it as we go through the next couple of meetings, but I can get you that map, no problem at all.
Question, does all the money the TERS brings in, does it stay within the TERS, or do we have some allocation outside of the TERS?
It can be spent outside of the TERS, but only for projects that support the TERS. For example, you can build a water line that starts 3 miles outside the TERS and pay for it with TERS money, but you can't just, it's not a revenue source that you can use to help other parts of town.
Okay, I think that was not a concern, but just more of a question of making sure that they're big zones, right? That their money is kind of staying close to the house there.
Right, and it has to do that, not just it's the right way to do it, but it's also state law, and the notion there is that you, the reason these were even allowed to begin with in state law was you had to identify an area that was not going to be developed, an underdeveloped or undeveloped area that was not going to be developed by private sources, private forces alone. Therefore, you create a zone, a TERS, that will encourage people to reinvest in this area. And you do that by earmarking public funds. These are taxes, you're earmarking only taxes that would never have been paid if it hadn't been for the development, if that makes sense. If it's sitting there right now, you start off with that base value. One of them, the base value is 0. One of them, the base value is $6 million. Well, that doesn't count because they're already paying those taxes. So those taxes aren't appropriate for the TERS. It's just everything gets built new on top of what the value is now. And so it's all that increment. That's why it's a tax increment. It's just on the increment. And those funds are spent to develop that particular geographic area, that TERS, however big it is.
Does that tell us, does that also tell us, and you can tell me if I'm wrong for using this term here, M&O, does it?
Yeah, it would be a percentage of the city's M&O, maintenance and operations, correct.
Okay.
And it can't be on the debt service, the INS.
And it cannot be on the debt service of the
So just a point of clarity there, our current TERS number 1 is applicable both to the INS and to the M&O because of the way the TERS was created way back when.
Sure.
Our new TERS negotiations that John is managing for us is we keep all of the INS. We'll get 100% of the INS, and we can use that wherever in the city we feel like it. And the M&O associated with the TERS, a percentage of it will be allocated to the TERS, and a percentage of it will be allocated to stay with the city.
Okay.
It won't be 100%, it'll be a percentage
Okay.
of the new money. So some of the new money will still go to the general fund, especially to support, say, police and fire.
Right.
Be the biggest, too expensive in a new subdivision or a new industrial development.
Right. Because these areas are so big, John, Jason's coming. Is he going to talk to us about our credit rating and bond ratings?
Well, the city will not issue debt itself.
Okay.
And probably don't want to spend the time tonight to talk about, well, Jason will next week, but others will either a MUD will issue debt, a PID will issue debt, a WICID, a water any way a WICID. I always forget what the C is.
Water Control Improvement
Control Improvement District. I always want to say Conservation District. Other parties will actually issue the debt, not the city. There won't be city debt on these.
And again, the city, it's legal for a city to borrow money out of a TER, or to use its TERS to borrow money, or to borrow money in support of TERS. My comment to you is, Jason Hughes would tell me not to, and I already told myself not to. That's not how big we are. Frisco will have a TERS borrow money for a project, and when we have the credit rating and size of Frisco, I'll let you know. You know, that's just not who we are right now.
Yeah.
That's
We
fine.
still want the developers to be the ones to have to put up the money. Now, they'll do it through a special district, but they're the ones putting up the money, and then we just provide make sure that the increment is able to return them on.
Is Jason Hughes going to give me any bad information next week? Is there any?
No, Jason is coming to just talk strategy and compare ways that other cities have handled similar issues. One of Jason's points will be governance. Let's say you have 2,000 new people living somewhere, and they don't really want their financial decisions related to public infrastructure in their area controlled by a board that the city council doesn't control. How do I deal with that topic? I would discourage municipal utility districts in an area where I'm going to have residential, and I would make instead a public improvement district where the governing board of the public improvement district is your elected officials, right? Every public improvement district we have so far, we've made the city council the board of the public improvement district. So when you vote, you control that. And my suggestion and what Jason would recommend and what you'll hear next week is one of his main themes is making sure that all the financial stuff isn't just done correctly financially, it's also done correctly from a governance standpoint. So that's kind of a double conversation that he'll have. He'll talk about both those elements next week.
So moving on with the calendar, early mid-March, kind of depending on where the county is, we'll have a work session scheduled here in the next few weeks with the county, and then we'll also need the county to have two votes. And one is to agree to the creation of the TERS and also an interlocal agreement with the city, because we'll be the sponsors or the host or of the TERS, and they will just be participants therein. So there's two agreements that I have to do. So depending on how quickly they're able to act or willing to act, we'll get that done. We'll have the public hearing again to remove the tracks. I already talked about that. The first vote, second vote. We'll have the hearings on the creation of the actual TERS, and then we'll approve a consent resolution for creation of an in-city MUD. And this will be Terrell MUD number 1, and that goes back to what Mr. Sims was just talking about. Municipal utility districts, they're all over the place, and all of the property that Las Lomas is all part of different MUDs. And so we're telling them, in order to come into and all these properties will be annexed into the city. None of them are in the city now. They'll be annexed into the city. That's part of the agreement. When they're brought in, those MUDs will go away, which we think is a good thing. But in order to finance the work inside the Anthony Properties TERS number 3, they want to create an in-city MUD. You can create an in-city MUD. And so as he just said, you don't really like to have districts or zones inside your city unless you can control them. The MUD's an exception in this case, we think, because it's going to be 100% industrial. There's not going to be residential in there. We wouldn't want to have a MUD in there with residential because that's just people in your city answerable to somebody besides you, which is not the way it's supposed to work. It's a governance issue. We won't have MUDs in any of the other ones. This is just an AP or a Las Lomas one, just so you know. So we will have the Terrell MUD number 1. And then a week or two after the early to mid-March meeting, we'll have the second readings on all those ordinances. You'll actually approve the preliminary and project plans. You'll see them. They'll get revised every 15 minutes, it feels like here lately. But those will slow down. They'll be finalized. They'll be still preliminary, but you'll actually vote on those. You'll approve creating a TERS board. In this case, the TERS board will be structured just like the TERS board you have right now, which 2 members will be appointed by the county and 3 members will be appointed by the city. Those can be council members or commissioners, or they may not be. They can be the same ones on all 4 boards, or they can be different on all 4 boards. But the only restriction we have in place so far that we've agreed to is that it'll be 3 people appointed by the city council and 2 people appointed by the county commission. The TERS board will then approve some other stuff that they'll need to do, but that's on their list, so to speak. And then there's an interlocal agreement because the TERS is a zone. It's a special jurisdiction. It'll actually have its own agreement with the county. And then the MUD 4B interlocal agreement. So the MUD 4B is the one that's going to stay outside the city limits. They're actually going to use that. Anthony Properties is going to use that to finance some of their debt. And so we'll have an interlocal agreement with the MUD 4B. They're going to go sell bonds, and then we'll use TERS money to pay them back. And so we need to have an agreement between the TERS and the MUD. And then sometime in spring, March, April, hopefully, some of these may be May, June, July, depending, because again, we've got 4 of them going on simultaneously, but they're in different places. And subject to the performance of development partners, because some of them are faster, some of them are slower, some of them are well, one of them you kind of want to strangle every now and then, but you don't, at least not yet. But we'll have development agreements, and that's the biggest thing, is, because it's less mechanics than some of the other ones, and that's, it's like any other kind of a development agreement. This is what we expect, and this is what you want to do. And so there's a lot of negotiation with that. With one of these, we're just about done. With one of them, it hadn't even been started yet. So we're really big differences there. And then you approve the final project and finance plans. It'll look, hopefully, just like the preliminary ones that you approve a week or two before this. But once you approve the preliminary finance plan, the preliminary project plan, then it goes to the TERS boards, and they will approve all 4 of them. And once they approve it, it becomes a final plan, then you have to approve it again. So you'll approve it twice, once it's a preliminary, then the TERS board approves it, and then you approve it, and it becomes the final plan. And that sets the tone. Those are the projects that are supposed to be built over the next however many years it ends up being. You may or may not approve a Chapter 380 agreement. That's a grant agreement. It's allowed under state law. It's commonly an economic development thing. In some cases, some of these negotiations may end up with a 380 agreement. Probably, if there is a 380 agreement, it'll end up in the development agreement, so it won't be a separate agreement, but it's on the list so that we know we have to do that in one way or another if grants are given. We'll conduct the public hearings on the annexation. Again, annexation is a big, big deal. We wouldn't be going through all this if it wasn't going to get annexed into the city. And then there's going to be some sort of public facilities agreement that we agree on what's going to get built, who's going to build it, how it's going to get paid for. And then the county and city participation agreement is like an interlocal agreement, an ILA. I think I might have listed it as an ILA in here somewhere else. That'll actually have to be approved too. And then the first vote on the zoning ordinance. This is meant to be a single council meeting, by the way, so hopefully nobody will schedule anything else for this particular agenda whenever it's going to be, and especially if we do all 4 TERSs at the same time. But that'll be a big meeting. There's a lot going on, and I'll stop there if you have any questions, or Mike probably has a comment.
Yeah, my only little comment is, this is like a big, take a deep breath and say, wow, there is a ton going on related to this. I've showed you the maps of the tax increment finance districts a couple of times in executive session. We'll spend more time talking about that. And I just want to say, sequentially speaking, remember, we need to have an agreement with the county that creates the tax increment refinance districts. So one question is council happy and pleased with the agreement we can negotiate with the county that enables us to take the county property tax money and put it into the tax increment refinance district? That's really the first step of all of this entire conversation, okay? Just because we get the tax increment finance district created and the county agreeable to it and the city council creating it, we might end up in a negotiation with one of these developers and decide, you know what, we're not satisfied and we need to bail out. We want to vote no on the development agreement. And my comment is, hey, that's an important moment if that needs to happen. On the other hand, I would also tell you, taking the opportunity of county willing to partner is hugely important. So we want to separate those two ideas in our minds, and we'll say, you know what, when the county's willing to partner, strike while the iron's hot, they're willing to partner, take advantage of that. That provides county property tax money for us to use to build roads, water, sewer infrastructure within our city limits, or repay a developer for building roads, water, sewer within our city limits. That's a very important step of county agreeing with city. So we want to do that. But we want to realize that anytime any of these negotiations fail, and John will be doing his due diligence, Charles will be looking at the land, I'll be looking at all of it, Steve Rogers will be looking at all the infrastructure. If we think a developer is giving you guys a raw deal, we're either just not going to bring it forward, or we're going to stop the negotiations. And so any one of these things could get slowed down, but I don't want to slow down the county agreement on the sake of not quite being happy with the developer. We want to get our county agreement in place, and that's part of one of our big themes here.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, ideally, we'd like to have the county approve all 4 TERSs at the same time, with the expectation that there's not a specific timeline after that for us to do these next steps. We'd like to do it the next week or the next month. And again, some of them I think we will do right away. But once the county approves those, there's on board. That doesn't obligate us to do anything if, in fact, like Mr. Sims is saying, if we back off, we don't work a deal, we decide not to do business with that particular developer or that particular development, then no harm, no foul. But again, it's important that we get the county on board. We've met with them, I guess, a couple of times now, and once in executive session, and So we're hoping to get all of those done at the same time. I just say that again because I don't want you to think like you have to do all 4 at the same time too, just because they do. It may be that you do one a month, and then next month you do one, and then you don't do another one for 6 more months. The sooner the better, because we want to get development going, we want to get building going, but we want to do it right too, and so we're not going to be hurried for that reason.
So Mr. Godwin said something just now that's very accurate, is that we want to do it right. When I've talked to the county judge and the commissioners, I let them know, hey, we as a municipality need partners in order to put the necessary infrastructure that we want for these developments moving forward. The framework needs to be done now. And as Mike and Godwin has said, that we put the framework in place, and if we have to pull back, that's all right, but at least we got the county on board and willing to participate in new development. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor.
Question about MUDs, which you can defer to next week, but I'm gonna say, hey, why do we need a MUD? If that is better served next week, you just tell me that, and that's.
Well, we only need one in that one of the 4, and that's TERS 3, and that's because as a financing mechanism.
I'll give you a broader answer also. A MUD or a public improvement district are an additional slice of property taxes, which means the person putting in place is voluntarily willing not just to pay the 76-cent city property tax, they're willing to pay an extra dime or an extra quarter or an extra whatever. And so a MUD or a PID is a additional property tax payment that's voluntarily put on by the landowner.
Does the MUD stay active forever?
The MUDs has a lifespan, and PIDs have lifespans.
Okay,
And
so,
the expectation in these, and that's not been inked, so to speak, but the expectation is that these would expire once the debt is extinguished.
okay,
Because that's the only reason they will exist, is for capital debt. Now, you've got PIDs in the city now that are for maintenance purposes, I think, but these will be strictly for capital debt. So once the debt is expired, then they will expire.
Mr. Godwin, I'll be reaching out to staff to get
ma'am.
your contact information. You've spoken to us since I've been on the council,
Yes,
7,
ma'am.
8 months, probably 3 or 4 times. So I want to make sure
Okay.
I know your role, what you're doing.
Okay.
A lot of this is still new to me, especially city governance
sure.
and all that.
Okay.
And I'd like to be talking to you a little more to ask you specific questions.
Okay.
You always seem like you're such a fast talker.
Well,
Worried if we were even paying you to do what you do. You're like, I got to get out of here. Maybe you're just a fast talker, but
I've been in local government since 1986. I've been to hundreds of council meetings, and I know they always go longer than everybody wants them to. So I don't like to hold people up that are ready to go home. Plus, Mike gives me an ugly look if I go too long.
I mean, we're
Not
here to-
really.
We're here to serve, so
Yeah, I appreciate
what we
that.
do is from heart.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
And I can tell that about you. It shows.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank
I'll see you next week.
Thank you, John. Next item on the agenda, so did we cover the discussion agreement?
No. You also need 9.2, which is John's other item before he runs away. Or I can handle it. He really is in a hurry to get home.
So this is item 9.2, discussion agreement
Interlocal
for
agreement
award
with RTC.
of transportation development credits between the RTC, Regional
You want me to do this
Transportation
from John?
and the City of Terrell.
Sure. What do you want me to talk about?
Godwin.
All right. Hey,
Or Mike,
I'm
either
going to
or.
present it, and John will answer questions about it. So if you go over to deep in your agenda, item 9.2, you can see an agreement with my former employer, agreement of award of transportation development credits between the Regional Transportation Council and the City of Terrell. John did a great job for us over the last 2 years, and he got policies approved by the City Council that match with the Regional Transportation Council's policy initiatives. When you do that, you earn money.
Free
They
money.
call that money transportation development credits. Transportation development credits means that we don't pay the local match, and we just take federal funds and do a project. Now, that's the theory, and it works really great. And it says here they've awarded us $280,000 in transportation development credits. Great, I love my former employer, they're doing a good job so far. You flip a couple of pages and you get to a chart, it says tip code, project descriptions, and you think, well, goodness gracious, who wrote that? It's very hard to decipher, and I will decipher it for you, and that is, they're poorly written, but they're not changing them because they already put them in a federal document. They got approved by the feds, okay? So pardon me for that, but that's the way it worked out. So John is tasked with working with Mike Burns. You guys met at previous council meeting. He's with the engineering firm KSA. And they're trying to turn this mush into real-life projects that we can build. And I believe that we're going to be able to do some pedestrian improvements around Bradshaw on 80, and maybe, but maybe not, a little on Birch at 80. And then we'll be able to go over to Spur 226, which is Virginia, and do a little sidewalk improvement, probably running from the railroad tracks to the south. I'm not sure if we can get very far, because that's not very much money, but we've got those two locations where we hope to primarily be building crosswalks, sidewalks. We're keeping them out of the zone within which we'll do our big complete streets projects. And if you say, well, why exactly this? It's going to be because somebody who's on RTC staff has given us money for free, and they were aiming for these kind of improvements. So
Yeah,
that's my quick.
We asked for a lot more money, and this is what we got. Now, the total construction cost that we've been approved for, that number is the match, but is 1.4 million. So we'll have $1.4 million theoretically to make improvements on 80 and on Virginia. And so sidewalks, some landscaping, some other safety improvements, probably some ADA compliant ramps at corners, things like that. They'll be safety related, almost 100%, I think.
Yeah, so step one is we'll ask you at your next meeting to approve this agreement. And I know it'll be frustrating because you can't really get a sense of what we're building here, but if I can get this agreement signed, we'll have some money that we spend that I'll ask you to approve related to the engineering cost of this project, and we'll show you interesting information soon with the actual design plans for this, and we'll give you a chance to have input on that and all that sort of good stuff. But if we don't approve the agreement, I can't get started. And that's what the step will be next week.
Then from there, we'll work with TxDOT to get an advanced funding agreement that you'll need to approve at a subsequent council meeting as well.
John, is the award amount 1.4 million or 280,000?
The credits are the 280, and that's the Virginia piece. We don't have the agreement on the other one yet. But the total amount, because the other is, as Mike said, the TDCs are to pay for our match. So instead of us having to pay 20% of the total project, we pay 0% of the total project. So it's 1.4.
A credit's equal to 280, which would have been the city's match.
We would have had to write a check for 280 for a $1.4 million project. In this case, we had to write nothing.
Yeah, and just for more clarity here, we would have had to write a check for 280 and pay for the engineering. Right. Now we just have to pay for the engineering. Right. Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you, John.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 9.3, discuss. Oh, yeah, we're going to go into executive session at this time. Under Section 551, adjourn into executive session in accordance with Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the following. Section 551.071, consultation with attorney pending or contemplated litigation. Section 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations. We are now in executive. Okay. Okay. Am I on there? No.
Yes.
Am I on there?
It's red.
We gotta change those colors, man. We're gonna reconvene into regular session and to consider any action, if any, on items discussed in executive session. There are none, so we'll move on to next item, which is 9.3, discuss resolution number 1090, resolution authorizing continued participation with the steering committee of the city served by Encore, and authorizing the payment of 10 cents per capita to the steering committee to fund regulatory and legal proceedings and activities related to Encore Electric Delivery Company LLC. This is our City Secretary, Don Stahl.
Mayor and council, I'm not going to read a lot of stuff. I'll be brief on this. The City of Terrell has been a member of the 162-member city coalition known as the Steering Committee of Cities served by Encore. The assessment is a per capita assessment of 10 cents per capita based on the population figure for the city. And basically, this is something that we've been a part of since the 80s. And the committee is actively involved in the rate cases, appeals, rulemakings, and legislative efforts, and they're also active and strong at ERCOT. And this is something that we've been a member of, and it's not a discuss and consider. I'll bring this back next week for a discuss and consider.
Thank you, Don. Does anybody have any comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 9.4, discuss upcoming calendars.
Yes, Mayor and Council, in your packet is a February, March, April, and May calendar. We are having meetings pretty much every week except for the week of March 14th, and also in May, the week of May 16th.
Okay, do we have anywhere on here? I had promised the council that we would begin the review process for Mr. Sims and his evaluation. And I think from some of the discussion I've had from the council, and please, this is your time to speak, that we were going to meet for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it took us, to just review the process and then determine how we're going to move forward with the evaluation. Am I correct in that? Does anybody recall that?
Yes, so are you saying that, hey, we should have a special workshop?
We need to figure out now when that's gonna be, that everybody, since we have a full council, what day works good for y'all?
And it needs to be.
And we're gonna, so it's gonna be a 2-meeting process. The first one is to look at the evaluation, set the parameters with which we're gonna do that, and then make sure we need legal there. And then the second one will be the evaluation process.
Are we talking about
And I told,
this month?
Yes, if at all possible, this month.
Okay, so we used to have Thursday meetings, so just in the spirit of that, I was February 17th, and that is just a arbitrary date. That means nothing. It's just open on the calendar and in the future.
Right, yeah. The 17th at 6 p.m.?
I'm open on the 24th.
No, there's a P and Z meeting at 5:30. I guess we could meet over in Tommy Spencer room, if y'all wanted to do that. Yeah, we could do that on the 24th if everybody would.
That's fine, and it's all executive session.
Yes. Can everybody do the 24th? Can we send out an invite for the 24th of February for that meeting, and then let legal know about it? Yeah, and it may be that yes.
Greg, this does have to be a posted meeting, correct?
It have to be a posted
Yes,
meeting,
and it has to be public, yes.
Okay.
Dora, that'd be a great time to get Rick his pizza.
All right.
At 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. Dora, would you send that out to everybody, please? Thank y'all, council. And then I think we're trying to get this done in March, is that right? Is that what we said, Royce? Yeah. Right? Okay.
So should we just?
Y'all want to go
kind of-
ahead and look at March and see?
Should we set the next date now?
We can.
Okay, Mayor Ronnie,
Y'all
go.
have something?
Do you want this to be separate from the regular meetings, when
Yes,
we do the final,
yes,
Mayor?
yes.
Okay.
Well, we've just got so much going on. I don't
That's
want it
true.
to,
That's
I don't want it to interfere on a Tuesday night.
So then are you looking at maybe March 3rd?
Yeah, I like March the 3rd if it's open for y'all.
That's fine. It's fine with me if it's a week.
Yeah, no, I think,
We'll drag it out forever if you give us too much time.
yeah. Hey, let's just set it, yeah, I like that. You got, well, I don't want to rush you. I don't want to rush you.
You don't want us to be too slow either, because we.
I don't want you to be too slow.
We had set a deadline of the week of March 17th. I mean, 7.
March the 7th?
The week of March 17th is what we last discussed.
So we could do the 17th if you wanted in March and then would be complete.
10th? Or is that it?
Traveling to National League of Cities the week of the 14th?
All right. No, Ken, how about the 10th?
I'm fine with the 10th.
March 10?
That's fine.
Okay. Let's do the follow-up then on March 10th,
That's fine.
again at 6. And,
Down here, I think.
okay, and legal needs to be
We'll be
at the,
there.
yeah. Okay, great, thank y'all.
You want us both there, Mayor? We will be. if you
Well,
want us.
no, I think we can rotate. It'll be
Okay,
fine.
that'd be
Yeah,
fine.
however y'all want to handle that.
That'll be fine.
Yeah. Mm,
It's just 2 meetings, right?
yes.
First to kind of put
Yeah,
the
the third is not
process
a go.
together, and then the other when you just deliver your evaluation. Okay.
Review, hopefully we can review the report on the second meeting, if everybody gets their information turned in. Okay, thank you. Our next item on the agenda, discuss monthly financial report for September 30, 2021, monthly report, end of fiscal year 21. This is our finance director, Jamarcus Ayers. It's yours.
All right. Mayor and council, I present to you the end of fiscal year 2021 financial report. On first page of the financial report is pretty much an overview of, and it gives you some highlights as far as how we performed in the general fund, utility fund, and the information technology fund. Starting off, general fund revenue was $1.29 million over what we actually budgeted for the fiscal year. That equates to 4%. And our expenditures exceeded our budgeted amounts by 1.16 million.
So again, I have a question. Most budgets that I see, when they're in parentheses, aren't those negative numbers? Rather than overages, wouldn't that be an under?
On the revenue side?
Yes.
Yeah, on the revenue side, if you look at the amended budget, we have 30.7. And then if you look to the left of it, you have the year-to-date actuals for 2021. And that total is 32 million.
We were over,
Yeah,
not under.
yeah.
What's the negative 4%?
The negative 40% is,
4%.
and yeah, it's actually, it should show as 104%. So we actually hit 100% of our budget, and it was 4% over. So that's the difference between what actually was budgeted and what we actually received in revenues.
It was not negative.
Yeah, it's not negative, and it was, and that's something that I've been talking to Mike Sims about, as far as these reports, and as a finance, as we're growing and trying to make things better, we're gonna, look at these financial reports and trying to, make them a little bit better on how they're, read.
Yeah, so moving forward, I think you take the parentheses off. The numbers, if they're accurate, are good.
Yeah.
Just so that they're not showing a negative. Is that a software problem? Is that?
Well, McKell actually originally created the financial reports, and what we do is we just enter the data into what she created.
Okay.
But I've been talking to Mike Sims about it, about changing a lot of things as far as presentation, so it's not, so it doesn't come out confusing.
If you orient yourself to the top line, you have the over in parentheses.
Yeah, exactly.
So you would have to change that if you're gonna change the bottom. But when I look at this and orient myself to how this is laid out, it matches.
Yeah, and then too, it's like in a lot of circumstances when you're looking at financial reports, data from the auditors and stuff like that. Normally, when you see things in parentheses, it means negative.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So
I think that top line needs to be adjusted
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, and I might just actually use some kind of color scheme or something like that to make it better.
Well, hey,
but-
it should be an easy
but-
fix for you, Jay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, keep going.
Okay. Okay, and the total revenue for September 2021 was 1.8 million. If we stay on that page, we had year-to-date actual revenue of 32 million. Budgeted was 30.7 million, and we were over 1.295 million. And then if we move down from there into the expenses for the general fund, you can see our September expenditures were 2.9 million. As you get, closer to the year of end, we notify all of our departments that, we're coming to the close of the fiscal year. So everybody's trying to get everything closed out. So that's why that number's that high for September. And then we have a year-to-date actual total of 31.8 million. The budgeted amount for 2021 was 30.6 million. And that's where you get your overage of 1.16 million for expenditures. And as we close out the year end, we had a net income of 218,000 approximately. And if y'all can recall from the budget book that we put together, we had anticipated it to be 372,000, but 218,000 is still relatively good because we're actually working to increase that fund balance, which we had talked about previously when we had talked about it. So
When I'm
that's
looking at
excellent.
this, when I look at the things in parentheses, those are the areas we were over.
Yes, and expenditures, and like legislative, you see that number is real high. Mainly that's because of the sales tax agreements that we have. The sales tax that we receive that goes out to the EDC, the paddock. We have the Bucky's agreements, the 380 agreements. So that all impacts that particular department. And then you also have the issues with COVID and, each department trying to adjust for those challenges that each department had with those issues. Okay. And then if you look on the following page, you pretty much get a breakdown of the budgeted revenue. Below that, you get a breakdown of revenue for September 2021. Majority of that revenue was city sales tax, which is normal at that period of the fiscal year. And on the following page, we have the budgeted expenses by each department, and then below that you'll get a depiction of the breakdown on. In red, you'll actually see the budget amount for the departments, and in blue is what was actually expended for those departments. So the difference, between the red and the blue is what was actually overspent in that
Okay.
department. If you,
Since everybody else is asking for edits on the presentation, I would also ask for a key for the budgeted expenditures by department.
yeah, I don't know what happened. It's normally in there, but I guess if some odd reason it didn't.
Oh, there may be
Yeah,
a check mark that has
Yeah.
to be, it's unchecked, a box that's unchecked right now.
yeah. And I'll make sure that's on there the next time. The following page is property taxes current for September, for the whole entire fiscal year. Year-to-date total for property taxes current was 8.7 million. We had budgeted 8.5 million, so we were relatively $250,000 over what we had expected to get in property taxes current, which is actually good for us. Sales tax, actually blew the roof with sales tax. When I went to my Government Finance Officers Association meeting, we were actually talking about how sales tax had increased drastically. City of Carrollton, they had seen a 28% increase, and you have a lot of different variables in that. You know, a lot of cost of goods are going up. When I was finishing my, I finished my second master's last year in December, and I took a sales tax course, and we were just talking about how the laws in Texas had changed that can actually increase that sales tax revenue. So I think in the next couple of years, especially with the growth in Terrell, we'll actually see that go up a lot more. So.
So let's talk about year end and your percentage of the budget was for the sales tax. You're up 14.14%, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
But the previous year, we were at 20.85, so we've actually gone down a little bit by a little less than 6%.
Oh, it's percent of prior year. Yeah, so it's
No, I'm
actually,
just trying to
okay.
filter everything. All right,
Okay.
we're good. Keep
Okay. So if you go to the next page, it breaks down the utility fund. Utility fund revenue was roughly 1.9 million. Year-to-date actual, 17.4 million. They had budgeted 16.7 million in revenue, and they exceeded that by 760,000. And expenses for September 2021 was 1.4 million. You had expenditures at 16.7 million, and the budget amount was 16.9 million. They were under by 196,000 roughly. And so net income for the utility fund was 756,000, which is great for them, great for the utility fund, because again, it's gonna help with that, increasing that fund balance and the days of reserve. Utility capital reserve, you had a, and I'm gonna run through these because these are not the big ones, but the utility capital reserve, we had a net income of 315,000. On the next page, the stormwater utility fund, you had a net income of 625,000 roughly. And on that following page, it gives you a breakdown of the stormwater projects and expenditures for the stormwater fund. And in red is the budget amount, and the blue is what actually was expended. The what is that? Oh, on the following.
Yeah.
Okay. On the following page, the equipment replacement fund, at September 30, 2021, you have a net income of 271,400. Capital improvement fund, we had a bunch of projects going on in that fund. We actually expected to hit a negative 962,000, but we exceeded that by 516,000, and that's mainly because I guess that's the Mike Cronin Business Park was one of them, one of those projects that actually just took off. Information Technology Fund on the following page. Kudos to Becca. She's done a relatively good job in controlling expenditures in the Information Technology Fund, and she was able to end the year at 204 $1,896 of net income, which will help eliminate the overage in the previous years in IT. The tourism fund on the following page, there was a net income of $404,379. The airport fund ended at $48,450 of net income. The impact fee fund on the following page had a net income of $35,000. Parks and Downtown Improvement Corporation, due to sales tax, they, what I was telling y'all about the sales tax and how part of that revenue that we receive actually goes out to the EDC and Paddock. This is one of those with the Paddock, and they received $983,462 of revenue to fund some projects that should be happening this year. On the last page, investments didn't do too well as anticipated, and that was mainly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I've been working with Harrison Steinberg with Time Value Investments to actually find some better opportunities for us to increase investment income, and we also have consulted with Jason Hughes to actually help out with that as well. And that's the end of the financial report. Is there any questions regarding the financial report for the end of the year?
Anybody have any comments or questions for Jay?
So I would like to issue a little bit of a, I'm going to say something new, something that we would probably do at my office, and this is for Sims and Jay. Because budget is kind of a council direction, and when there's a variance greater than 5%, I kind of want to know what the variance is, right?
Yeah.
Whether over or under. So my challenge to Mike and Jay is come back in 30 days and let's talk end of the year budget, and let's talk about any variances over 5%. The synopsis can be short and sweet. But, you know, some places we spent under, some places we spent over. If I look at streets, man, streets are really important. We left $337,000 on the table.
Yeah.
Well, we probably did it to balance the budget somewhere, right? That's probably the answer. But when we have a budget, it is a council direction. So to be off more than 5%, there should probably be, we should just explain the variance. I just think it's a good practice. It is a good accountability practice for council to hear a variance is over 5%. We probably need to do it by quarter, which can be tough to do in your world because you have projects all over the place. But it is just an area of accountability.
And it may be something as simple as, hey, you know what? Rather than do it or expenditure in 2021, it's going to run over to 2022 for whatever reason.
Right. The variance. I mean, variance can be explained, but I'm saying they should be explained.
Right.
If you have a variance of 30% and council asks you to spend that money and you left 30% of it on the table, I kind of want to know why.
Yeah, well, I don't want us to get into spend it or lose it, because that's a bad way to govern, because then you have people wanting to spend that money. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you 100% that we should have those numbers and something that we can digest so that we're prepared when we go into budget. I agree with you.
Sure, that just helps us for budget.
Yeah, I don't want to sign up for perfection on the goal you just set, but what I would say is let Jay and I work through the question of what's realistic for us to put in summary format and get out to you. My request for Jay is that he come forward at an upcoming meeting and give you a January 31st, 2022 monthly budget report, right? We've obviously missed some. We've obviously had some delays and difficulties, and that's all fine and good. but the next report you should get should be January 31st. I don't know how much progress we can necessarily make on achieving the goal you just set in the very next monthly report, but my comment is we're thinking along the same lines. Notice what I put on the front page here, where Jay and I worked through under the general fund. We're trying to explain from a policy standpoint what's different, right? So that summary memo page, that's a really important page there in terms of we're trying to hit the biggest policy questions there. I believe that we can get a good distance towards your request in our next budget report, but I don't want to tell you I'm going to achieve perfection on every 5% variation at the next meeting, okay?
Right. No,
Yeah,
that-
yeah,
that's
we'll make
fine.
progress, yeah.
That's fine, but I am saying this is something, this is like past, right? This is, I would say, man, you don't have to spend too long on this project. The amount of time you spend on it is up to you. But this is the end of fiscal '21, which was 120 days ago. So, yeah, I expect for you to be able to tell me my variances pretty quickly. So that's
Mr.
my
Ayers, I
comment.
don't know what your workload is, but I know you have a great responsibility with the city.
Yeah.
If I think you need more time to get those, you just need to let us know. But if
Okay.
you like them, I think it'd be beneficial
Okay.
to see those, but we need to know those. But if you need more time, I could understand that.
Okay.
Say, so do you have the ability, in your capacity and what you're doing now, to look at real-time financials? Is that doable?
Well, well, the way that that's is presented in the software system, it might be a little complex. Whenever I try to present it directly from the software, in a council meeting or a setting like this, that I'm trying to relay this information to you all. So what has been happening is it's a lot of data entry. We have to take that information from the system and actually input it into Excel spreadsheets.
I think what we want to get is to be able to look, if a request comes from one of the council members
Yeah,
in real time, hey, where is this, where are we on this budget?
yeah,
I would like for them to have an answer, and I understand, we're getting there. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you what to expect in the
Yeah, and
future.
so, Mayor, I just want to be clear about this, is the software Jay needs is the software that Becca presented to you several meetings ago called Tyler Technology, where we said, you know what, we really need to spend this $1 million. I think we can do it through American Rescue Plan funds to do a major upgrade to the software. The cumbersome thing that goes on now is taking the Harris financial software, which is our accounting package. It's basically a very DOS kind of a 1992 package, and it's a giant hassle. And so Jay has taken the leadership to take all of that stuff and take it out of Harris, put it into some Excel spreadsheets, and give you a monthly report.
Yeah.
That's way too time consuming.
Yeah.
We all know that you need to have modern software where you can punch a few buttons and say, hey, run me a monthly summary report. Bang, boom, here it is. It's in a format that can go to council.
Yeah.
That's what we all expect, and that's the thing I need to pay for and buy a new thing, okay?
Yeah.
And you'll get more reports from Becca as we're gravitating to that software. So
IT's important, road and streets important, there's nothing more important than the financial.
Yeah.
Our
And
what we review, because we're the governing body. If
Yeah.
something goes wrong with the city, we need to know about it.
Yeah.
Be alerted to it, hey, we got a problem now.
Yeah.
So that we can start making policy and determining how are we gonna address it, rather than it just hit us. And we're not there, we don't
Yeah.
wanna be there.
Yeah.
And that's just my comment. Hey,
Yeah.
we wanna give you the tools to get that information to us.
Yeah.
Shame on us if we don't invest in the financial side of it,
Yeah, that would definitely help out a lot.
yeah,
right?
I agree.
Are you happy?
I'm definitely going to give you an opportunity to vote
Responsibility, not
on
fault.
a,
Well, I think that's the first time Royce ever.
You will soon have an opportunity to vote on a contract with Tyler Technology that will have 7 digits in it. So
Yeah.
coming soon.
And
And I'm pretty, oh, go ahead.
to round it out, I mean, you know, I'd honestly, every time I really hate to get you know, we're over a quarter behind from receiving reports. So, you know, my first question or comment tonight wasn't going to be, you know, why am I getting this report so late, Jay?
Yeah.
But more of a, hey, what tools, you know, remind us what tools are needed. What is it that is different from maybe, you know, a year and a half ago in helping make sure that we receive these reports timely. And I think, you know, we've talked more than once, we've mentioned more than once today throughout the meeting that it is our responsibility as council members and mayor to be good policymakers.
Yeah.
And with that comes understanding the finances and how city government is working here. So it's not, it is, but at the same time, it's not, hey Jay, why haven't I gotten my report in over a quarter? While it also is, hey, what are the tools? Remind us, what is it that we need to make sure we have in place and support staff in to make sure that we have the reports out? Because in my world, you know, we also get reports at once a month, and then we have weekly internal reports that are also provided. So it's just where we're at in the world. Reporting is usually instantly now, or sometimes there's some work in the background with Excel and putting some numbers that may take some time. So I want to make sure that, you know, I can be as supportive as I can to make sure that we are in the 21st century with our finances.
Yeah.
One final ask from the mayor is if you can't get the information that Royce has requested on the 5% in each request, right? At least give us as a council where you are in the process by next week,
Okay.
right? When
Yeah.
you come next week, tell us, hey, this is where I've gotten so far. Be quick. I know, but I want to make sure, hey, how important it is.
Yeah.
And that we know that you're hearing us and you're working towards that goal.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know is, hey,
Yeah.
he's listening to us and we're getting there. We want to work with you to make sure that we get the information that we want. But if we don't have the lines of communication going
Yeah.
and we just wait, that's a bad way to do business.
Yeah.
So at the very least, just let us know, hey, this is where I am on it. And
Yeah.
This may be the hold up for us.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Hey, does that sound reasonable to you for next week to have that ready based on your workload or schedule? I mean, if she's telling me these reports are kind of late,
Yeah.
I'm saying, is it a manpower issue? Is it a time? Is it a
Oh, yeah.
management? What-
Yeah, we
We need to know that because we need to be supportive in that.
Yeah.
So we can help you be
And
successful. That's what I want from all the directors.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, when I took over as finance director, it had, you know, it was pretty much a challenge when I took over. You've taken a department, you know, where you practically didn't have any processes or, you know, anything to follow. You didn't have a guidebook, and you're pretty much just building it yourself. So, I brought John back. He left in March. I lost one of my staff. I hired Shelley, and then I had to hire one to actually make up for the individuals that I lost. Then, you know, I guess I'm the brains of the operation, so I've, you know, kept myself abreast on everything. Just learning from Mike about the tiers and the PIDs and all the stuff that's going on with the city. And, you know, I'm proud of myself, but I feel like I can still do better, and I'm listening to everything that y'all are saying, and I'm definitely going to try to, you know, meet the expectations that y'all have set.
I think you're capable.
Yeah.
I don't want to question that. I trust who you are and what you can deliver for this city. But I just want to make sure we're giving you the tools you need. And
Yeah.
back to the first question. Do you think that's reasonable to have that for us next week?
Yeah, and
We just want you to be, I want you to be honest.
I'm not gonna set myself, you know, to that because I do have a lot to deal with. I'm still running housing. I'm still training individuals. maybe give me a little more time, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I can turn around something.
Again, I'm sorry, maybe you misunderstood me. I don't want the information, I just want
Okay.
where you are in the process.
Okay.
That you're working towards.
Let me just interject to say, let Jay and I sit down after the meeting. Let Jay and I take a deep breath, soak it in, and Jay and I will bring you forward something real soon, either in an email or in a city council agenda, and we will get you that communication out. But let Jay and I, we heard the request, let Jay and I strategize tomorrow morning, okay?
No, I agree with you.
Thank you for what you do for us, Mr. Ayers.
There's no problem. Yeah, I'll
Much
try
better
my best.
presentation than
I
that.
don't want to whip you with a wet noodle.
Much better presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We just need to figure out a way those parentheses can get changed over to positive, right? It bugs
We
me.
might need you to get over
Yeah,
to
and
the
you know,
general
What I do,
accounting standards.
I
you know,
kind of look
learn
at
some
other
accounting.
cities and see what they're doing, and I get ideas, and I'm just trying to bring
Yeah, 'cause
the
I-
city into the 21st century because
Yeah,
we're behind on a
I
lot of
agree with
stuff.
you, But I
so,
see a
yeah.
negative 4%, I'm thinking, how can that be? It's not adding up. It's
Yeah.
really a positive. It's-
Yeah, and it's just how it was set up.
And now, I mean, I'm used to it now, but everybody else looking at it might think,
Then don't-
man, they're
don't
running
change
a
it if
negative
you're used
balance.
to it now.
Okay.
Point of order,
Good
point of
job,
order.
good job.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, I think, before Jay leaves, I have to.
I don't know, yeah.
Be thankful he's not coming in here and telling you, Mayor, I don't know where we're gonna find the money.
Yeah.
Lawyer, point of order.
All right, next, thank you, Jay.
All right, no problem.
Our next item on the agenda is 10.1, which is discuss and consider resolution number 1088, a resolution authorizing continued participation with, we already did that one.
No, this is a different one.
There's always two, one's Encore, one's Atmos.
All right.
You on the right one?
Okay, so a resolution authorizing continued participation with the Atmos City Steering Committee and authorizing the payment of 5 cents per capita to the Atmos City Steering Committee to fund regulatory and related activities related to Atmos Energy Corporation. Again, this is City Secretary Don Style.
Mayor and council, we talked about this resolution last week. This is authorizing the continuation of the city's membership in the Atmos City Steering Committee at an amount of 5 cents per capita. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone
Does
has.
anybody have any questions of Don?
Nope, call to vote.
All right, is there a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number 1088 as presented.
We have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Is there a second? Have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. It is 11.1 and 11.2. It is to consider ordinance number 2900 on second reading and also ordinance number 2901 on second reading. And we need to read that into the record?
We
or-
can, if you wish, Mr.
Please.
Mayor. I'd be happy to do it. Ordinance number 2900, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Texas, amending Chapter 9, Section 9-9, Civil Service Classification Plan, A, classification of firefighters, and B, classification of police officers, 9-9A1, positions appointed by the fire chief, and 9-9A2, firefighter classification, and 9-9B1, positions appointed by chief of police, and 9-9B2, police officer classification, revised code of ordinances of the City of Terrell, Texas, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. This comes to you tonight on second reading. Also, on 2901, these can be considered together. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Coffin County, Texas, amending Chapter 5, Business Regulations, Section 2, sale of alcoholic beverages by the addition of subsection J, sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages during a special event, and subsection K, penalty, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing a penalty, and providing an effective date.
Thank
This is also on second reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion on 11.1, 11.2?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3. Second? Second. I have a second from Grady Simpson, District 2. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.